So today we're here for the breakdown, and I have a guest with me. You guys may or may not know who this is. This is Parvision. I did a reaction to his Usopp video recently, and I thought it'd be great to do a breakdown together. How you doing, Parvision?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I know. Something I wondered when I saw your channel was your name. Where did that come from, Parvision?
So, it's actually, I feel like maybe this is a common thing with creators, but like my name is in the thing. So my real name is Parvis. So Parvision. Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. So I originally, like, people have been asking me, like, what do I call you? Parvision, whatever. And it's just been like, completely, because I'm a shy person. I don't like, I'm a private, shy person. And I just like, it completely went over my head. I'm like, wait a second. People are just gonna be calling me by my real name this whole time. But yeah, so. Yeah,
my real name is Brago, so it was like easy.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm lying. That's not my real name.
I was like, wait, hold on. What? That's a dope. That was the other thing. A lot of people have crazy, cool names too. And then I was like, you might as well have made your username your real name because it's so dope.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing with the internet, right? You can be whatever you want to be, and nobody can really tell if it's the truth or not, right? So a lot of people take on, these personas, and that's what makes the internet great and terrible at the same time. But that's cool. That's really cool. There are a few other people that do that use their real name into shit. I think for me, again, I'm private as well, so it was just like that was never an option for me, even a play on my real name, because I was just like, people are fucking weird. But I think that's cool. And we talked a bit about like you and starting out. We probably get into that a bit later, but I'll ask you this as an introductory question. When did you first start reading One Piece or watching One Piece, and why did you start doing it, and what resonated the most?
All right, that's a good question. So I actually didn't read first. I started reading I started reading this year actually. But I've been watching since I was like 7. It just came on Saturday morning or whatever, and
watch 4Kids?
I was a kid. Yep, in dub, and the first intro song was my jam.
Yeah, yo.
And so ever since then, I just every Saturday or whatever it was, in college or whatever, there was like probably a dip, but then I forget when I transitioned to sub, because like they stopped it on 4Kids, but I ended up finding it on the internet and sub. And so for the last however many years, like 15 years, I've been watching every Saturday as much as I can, and then this year, because like I started recognizing the pacing stuff, everyone's always said the manga's better, but like the pacing really hit full force, I think, like Whole Cake Island. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to break this tradition of just watching it. I'll start reading it. So I started reading probably, I think it was the 1,000th chapter. Like once that came out, I just connected back to wherever the anime was lined up. And then I just caught up. And then in terms of like making my videos and reading it, that's honestly where my videos started, where I was rereading all the stuff in the manga. It's a lot faster, a lot more efficient. Then I started seeing all these connections. And a lot of it was memory based too, because like I knew like my memory is like steel trap. Like I can remember everything from the at least if it's like visual content, like I can remember things for the most part. Like it replays in my head. So
that's dope.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. I think. Well, do you still watch it? Do you still watch the anime at all?
Yeah, I still watch it. I have to. And also, so actually, this is a question I was saving for later, but it kind of segues well. Do you feel like Oda puts canon anime only scenes in the anime?
Yeah, I think at this point we have to view it as that. Obviously we can't take everything that's an extra scene as canon,
right?
But I think we can use different things, right? Because even in the anime, something we've talked about, me and my guys, we talk about all the time is, well, the page one stuff, right? In the manga, page one was done as far as we knew. Right. In the anime, they had a bit of an extra scene there where he got up after Sanji left. So then in the anime, you knew page one wasn't defeated, but in the manga, it was like, well, is page one done? That was like something we were asking the entire time. All of a sudden when the Toby Roppo showed up, it was like, well, page one is right here, where we already knew that in the anime. Another thing was, I don't know if you remember in the manga where it had someone was following Jinbei and Robin, and in the manga, it never showed who that was. In the anime, it showed that it was Yamato, I believe. So even in the anime opening, before we knew it in the manga, who
Yamato,
Denjiro, right? Before he got revealed, in the anime, it had Ashura, Doji, and Kyoshiro like together in a weird way, and it was like, holy fuck, like, are they saying that this is he was like with the scabbards essentially in the opening? So it's like, okay, they're saying that he's Denjiro, and then I think a couple chapters later it got revealed that he was Denjiro. So it's, I think the anime does provide some more context with certain things. There's something else that happened recently that I don't remember. I think
the one, there's so many examples. Yeah. I have a lot, but the one that like sticks in my head is everyone is pissed about this. I say everyone loosely, but like I feel like I heard a lot of people angry that Zoro's Conquerors was shown in the anime. Oh yeah,
that was in the anime. Yeah,
but then even before that, like they showed it on Onigashima like explicitly, but they had the anime only scene where in the manga they showed that Zoro was like, they showed I forgot the guy's name, the blue
Hidoro. No. I know you're talking about. He died.
Yeah. So in the manga, they showed him meeting up with him after doing like the whole Yakuza gambling house thing. Yeah. But in the anime, they showed it, and in that scene, they showed the whole Conquerors there, and it was like, it was explicit.
Oh,
but like,
okay, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, and so it's like those things. It's like Oda is definitely doing it in a different way in the anime, and it's very slight, and I think it makes a lot of sense because then it keeps the anime interesting, right, while keeping canon to the manga without like changing things crazily. And then obviously there's like the gag stuff and things to extend it, but there's definitely like a value to watching the anime because sometimes you get things that even in the manga you don't like notice or see explicitly.
It's more context. It's more context. Something in the anime that they showed that a lot, like, okay, for manga readers, they're looking at it. They're like, well, for Jinbei and Ace, right? It's like, well, they tied. And the anime had like Jinbei kind of fell first, so it's kind of like, well, technically, but it's like in the anime, it showed that, so it provides a bit more, and I don't mind it, but then it has scenes like Batman versus Luffy. I don't know if you've seen that, where Batman, he was using Haki and he was fighting Luffy. You said Batman,
I was thinking like DC, but then I was like, oh, you're talking about Batman.
Batman. He was fighting Luffy on equal ground and even pushing him back. It was like, holy fuck, like, wait, what is going on here? So that was a little upsetting, but like I feel like those kinds of nonsense scenes at the beginning of the arc, those you can't be having Luffy. That was like 1% Luffy, like 0.5% Luffy. He didn't know what was going on. He just washed up ashore and then he had to fight Batman. Like, it's a funny thing. Thing. I don't,
Batman was light speed there. Like,
yes. It's a lot of like fucking crazy stuff, but yeah, I do use the anime in certain moments, like for Zoro's Conqueror's Haki. It's funny, but I made a video, I want to say 6 years ago now, where it was,
dang, that's some good memory.
Yeah, because it was like early on when I first started my channel. It was like one of the first videos I made, where it's like Zoro showed Conqueror's Haki. And it was like in the anime, actually, where Whiskey Peak, in the anime when Zoro and Luffy are fighting, it was like some slight lightning in the air, right? It was like when they were clashing, it seemed like it's not as like exaggerated as it is now, but it was like the anime was showing that it was like something weird going on with them clashing. And so off of that, I was like, okay, this is different. This is not like, anything we've expected. And at this point, we had already seen the Monet scene, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so like with that type of intimidation, I felt like, well, this makes sense. It could be a variant. But I think Zoro, based on what it meant to be a conqueror, in my opinion, I felt like he had everything that was necessary. So it's like it was a foregone conclusion in my mind that he had Conqueror's Haki. I was just wondering what was taking Oda so long to show
bring it out full force. Right?
Like it was pretty like knowing Zoro, and then again the Straw Hats and then their goals. It was like, all right, come on, like it's pretty clear that he's gonna have Conqueror's Haki. So that was cool, especially in chapter 1010 when like that felt like a fan-made chapter where we had Conqueror's Haki, Ashura. It was just like, Scar and Kaido. It was just so much going on.
Yeah.
That I felt like this is something that we wanted,
Yeah. Wait, going back to, I want to ask this question because it's important for my theories. Like, are you subscribed to the idea that Conquerors has different variants, right? Like it's, some people say it's just like the knockout, like just knocking people out and intimidation, right? But then in Zoro, it wasn't like the same incapacitation. There was like a paralysis almost.
Right.
And then in my Usopp video, I was saying like his Conqueror's Haki would be a different variant that wouldn't be, maybe it's a fearful one or which is kind of similar to Zoro's, but it would be like slightly different. I'm also in my I have my Sanji video coming out, and I have a different variation for him too. And so you subscribe to the idea that there's probably going to be different kinds of Conqueror Hakis.
I think this is something that is possible because every other form has variants, right? And they could be gags, because for Sanji, for his observation Haki in the chapter where he said he could sense women from really far away, so it's just like, it's kind of a gag, but it's a way that's like could be a form of observation Haki. Then we saw with observation Haki, we have Luffy's path, which is more instinctive, where then you have something like Katakuri, then you have Fujitora and Usopp. So like there are different paths for observation and armament. We're seeing that there are different levels and different things to that as well. And then when you think of Arm and Haki, you think of like what Katakuri did, where he's like, there are levels to this, but he didn't necessarily use like Riho, So it's just like, if we have different variants here, and then based on what Zoro did, I'm like, there has to be different things to Conqueror's Haki, but I'm not sure if it's ever going to get fleshed out in that way, right? So, even with the Conqueror's Haki coding that Luffy used recently, I'm like, is there going to be another way in which, like, something that we talked about or something you brought up in one of your videos with elemental Haki and how that's being implemented? So I think it could be. It just depends on if Oda decides to flesh it out.
Right. Yeah, I got so, like, everything you said, like, I have so many ideas. Like the Sanji one, actually, the part that I just posted includes the whole, like, is the the observation part of it where he can sense women from far away, is that a gag? And the reason why, and I'll just say it because I already posted the video, whereas all these other stuff I'll talk about, like, it's in the future videos, but the Sanji one, there's actually direct parallels to what Sanji can do to Oden. Oden had the same thing where you think back to
how everyone was kind of like
the dude abandoned Whitebeard, like, getting onto his ship because he sensed a tear. He was so driven to. So I mentioned that in the video, and I'm just like, well, like, there's not just here, but there's a few other connections. I don't know if this one's in the video, so I guess it's a little teaser, but I'll just say, like, how Oden, there's no explanation for how he survived the boiling oil. They didn't show armor or Haki. He just stood there, right? Yeah. So it's like, and then in the recent chapters with Sanji, we find out that Haki is actually a fire detriment, like not detriment, like deterrent. Like he uses that to withstand his own heat. So then you got to ask yourself, is that connected to Oden surviving boiling oil for an hour? Maybe it's not armament Haki, because we would have seen that. At this point, he would show us if it was armament Haki. It has to be something else, but it doesn't make sense for that to just be like completely unexplained. And so that's where like the connection, where it's like, why there's 3 parallels I noted in my video for Sanji and Oden, and the biggest part of it is like, we know Oden's Haki is top tier. Like had he lived longer, he probably would have been, had he lived longer, and also had he been exposed to the world. I think that's part of the nonsense, where it's like, he's this strong and he was just on Wano fighting like what, like he you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
he never really was exposed to as
whereas
much
like
as,
Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, they're out there fighting the world's best, right? And Oden's just was stuck on Wano. And I think we talked about earlier in our conversation how it like Loki, that's kind of how I feel. I just get dropped into the situation and it's like, whoa, like who is this guy?
No, I think Oden is somebody that Oda kind of builds him up as this different, like almost like a deity, right? How they talk about Oden and just how special he was. And I think if he'd lived, he'd be definitely in the upper echelon. I mean, I think he's upper echelon already, but I think he definitely had more room to grow in regards to strength. But no, something I thought about as well was when you just talked about Oden and surviving the boiling hot oil, is Big Mom and whatever she has, that, it's like she has some kind of protection from certain things, and that could be, due to her Conqueror's Haki as well, right?
I want Big Mom is like, so you just put out your top 30. I think you put her Big Mom at 5. I think so. And like some people put Big Mom up in top 10, and like whether it's meme or not, I'm just like laughing because I'm like, nobody in the top 10 should be taken out by Frankie's motorcycle.
Wow, that's how you feel about Big Mom. Okay.
No, I mean, so I recognize she's super strong, right? But then Oda does her dirty with things like that. I'm just like, I feel like if you're in the top 10, like either Frankie is absurdly strong and his motorcycle's top 10, or Big Mom's like armor is inconsistent, because like it doesn't make sense that Brook did his like super attack and like, it just straight bounces off. But then like there's like this weird thing with metal in also with One Piece, because it feels like Frankie's motorcycle is just metal, but like how come Conqueror's Haki can't bounce that off? You know what I mean? Like there's some interesting like I don't know if I want to say inconsistency, or maybe we're not getting the full explanation of it. I'm not sure, but like it's just when I saw that scene, like in the manga, it didn't hit that much that she was done dirty. Like I saw that she got hit by the thing, and then Frankie and Jinbei like flipped her out of the house. I'm like, all right, this is like low key gag in the middle of the war, fine. But then in the anime, they did her so dirty, and I'm just like, I was like, this is one of the strongest characters in the whole show. Like I believe that she is, but then you do a scene like that, and it's like, I feel kind of silly saying that now.
No, I feel like a lot of people feel the way you do, honestly, believe it or not, in the community, where Big Mom, it's almost like you're forced to put her there because, oh my God, like she has so many different other things that makes her absurd. Yeah. And so I think this is a result of Oda being who he is, where it's, if there's a good joke, he's going to make it. Right. And there's certain characters that he uses to make these jokes. Big Mom, Sanji's one of them, right? Where a lot of times it's like, Sanji got done dirty there, where it's just, he doesn't get the same treatment like for instance, Zoro, and Big Mom doesn't get the same treatment like, for instance, Kaido, but it's kind of like looking past that. And in the grand scheme of things, how many people can Big Mom defeat as opposed to the others, right? Like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Like, Frankie, if it's just Big Mom and Frankie in an arena, how long is Frankie lasting?
I'm just like, so the perspective I'm thinking is like, Frankie tries that to Shanks. Like Shanks fucking just turns on his Conquerors and then it just gets blown away. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's different. It's weird because like, you know, Frankie, you're like trying that with someone like a Kainu, you know, it's not going the same way. But if he tries it with someone like Aokiji, he probably is gonna like, okay, like, what are you doing? Personality matters here.
Do you feel like, so I mean, I feel like Straw Hats in general, right? They get treated again, inconsistent isn't the right word here, but like some are serious, some aren't serious, and it's like Chopper is the biggest example, right? Like I made a Chopper video, but like the biggest thing working against my theory is, does Oda want him to not be merchandise, or like does he actually have clout in the show? You know what I mean? Like he straight up slapped Queen. He's powerful, right? But like after time skip, he's just like,
he's merch.
He's merch, right? You think he's merch? He's gonna be merch forever?
Yes, he's merch. I don't like Chopper.
That's so hard for me to swallow. He has so much potential.
He's merch. I mean, he's cuter. He's lovable. He's a mascot at this point. Yes, he is powerful, but those moments are like, it's like filler moments waiting for the actual people to come in and do something. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, Chopper's fine. You know, he's not my favorite Straw Hat. But it's just like,
he could be my favorite. I would, you know, I'm not like trying to plug it in, but the Chopper video, it's shorter. You should watch that one because like if that's possible, he's. And the thing is, it's a lot less of a stretch than the Usopp video. This thing, the only thing, like I said, the only thing working against the theory mainly is he merch? Is Oda making him gonna stay merch for the next, what you said, 7 years, 5 years, however many?
Yeah.
Like they already got all the money they need from Chopper. He's not gonna change. You know what I mean? Like, please don't make him merch anymore.
That's a difficult thing, right? Because I think One Piece is bigger than Oda at this point, right? Yeah. So I'm sure there are a bunch of advisors that he has to answer to. People in marketing, all these different people. It's like, hey, you know, and so for him, I'm sure he would like to keep the manga pure, right?
Yeah.
But One Piece is like a brand at this point, and I'm sure even with the story, there's some things that he has to wrap up because it's just like, okay, we gotta do this. It's an anniversary coming up here, and here. But it's like, it's not just about what Oda feels at this point, and so I would like for Chopper to be better than he's been. I would like for a lot of the characters to be better than they've been, right?
Yeah.
But it's just so profitable. I don't see it changing.
Yeah. Whereas with all the other characters, like Usopp, for example, I see the reason why up until now he hasn't had like the like shining moment that we all want him to have, or some of us want him to have. Some people just straight out hate Usopp.
Yes,
but like,
I used to be one of them actually.
Yeah, and like I feel like a lot of people had those moments, right? I think in End of Enies lot, or you know, like around that time when they had the fight, that's where people like there was probably half the community was like, good riddance to Usopp. Right. I don't want him anymore. You know what I mean? And then other people were probably like, you know,
damn,
like like this makes me love Usopp because he stood for himself, or he's strong, or this is where he's potential. There's a lot of ways it can go, but like you understand why Usopp has all these barriers to whatever end of series form he has, whereas with Chopper, it's like he doesn't have those barriers, and the only thing standing in our way is like this advisory that you might be right about. Like I'm just imagining Oda just like he has this whole like plan for Chopper. He walks to the board and they're just like, nah, dude, he's merch. Like
no, we gotta keep him this way. Sorry. Yeah. And it's just like, you have all these other characters he can play with. Like Chopper, leave him alone. But that's why it's scary with someone like Carrot, right? Because in the worldwide poll that we had, Carrot was really high. And so that's why I fear Carrot may just go on the journey towards the end just because she's a popular worldwide character, you know? And I think that's what One Piece kind of has become, where I think in general, Oda doesn't, he said it, he doesn't like killing off characters. Yeah. But I think also, for instance, someone like Law, right? Law became like a fan favorite. So now Law has to stick around. And I know for Oda, he said he had already planned on killing Ace. But I wonder if he already plans on killing Law. Because if he already plans on doing something like that, he's going to go through with it. But I'm I'm sure that Law probably didn't have this prominent of a role until it was like, oh shit, a lot of people really like this character, you know? And
I was just gonna say, I think in terms of like killing off characters, I don't want to say that this is a tell, but like, you know, a lot of times in other shows, it's like if you get the person's backstory, like in the midst of a climax moment that they have, you're like, yo, this is a death flag, like they're gonna die, right? Whereas in Marineford, I feel like a lot of people when he died, they didn't really get emotionally attached, right? Because at that point, the only way you'd really care about Ace is like from Alabasta, and then purely off of Luffy's connection to Ace, right? So if you were like more empathetic, like, yo, this is my big brother, this is like my family member, blah blah blah, then you would be upset, right? Like I was pretty upset. I was like, damn, that's rough, like I can't imagine that, you know? But like then they showed his story after the fact, right?
That was
like,
rough.
I feel like that's kind of like because Oda is kind of like, if I do the backstory first in Marineford, then everybody knows Ace is gonna die, right? So that might be a soft tell that like he plays around with when we get their backstory, and we're low key kind of seeing that with like King, right? Like even in the chapter that we're about to talk about, like he gets defeated, then we get more of his backstory, right? Like
and I'll ask you about that a bit more because, you know, I have some feelings about it. All right, let's let's get to it. I guess the chapter starts off with King getting defeated. Then we get into the backstory of King feeling like Kaido.
Wait. Can we back up just a little bit?
Oh, sure.
To the spread. Do you have the spread open?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Are you a person that like looks into the spreads and like sees, like, I know before me there was like a lot of people like, oh, like if they look left, blah blah blah, like does Oda hide these things? I mean, there was the whole Wano thing, right? Like 12 years ago he had the spread with Momonosuke as a dragon. Yeah. So I feel like spreads have meaning, but do you look at them when you?
So I do, right? But because I even made a video years ago about, I don't know if you know about the Zoro spread, where Zoro's supposed to die in chapter 944.
I do not.
Right? Yeah, so it was it's one of the early videos I made on my channel, where it was just like, oh, here's Zoro's a death flag, chapter 944, look out for it. And so there've been chapters like that before, but it's kind of like I see them, but I don't like take them to heart, right? So it's like, oh, that's cool, but then like I just move on. I don't harp on it. I don't think about it because, you know, more likely than not, it's not the case. Yeah,
like there's red herrings, obviously, too. A lot of it's fun too. But I was like, I had this like with the spreads, like this is just Oda just having fun. But then sometimes like I feel like if I were writing it, I'd be like, ooh, it'd be funny if I just dropped this in there. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's very Oda-like. Yeah, for
sure. I think that's a cool thing Oda does. There was I don't know if this was a spread, but it was like a was it a chapter cover? Do you remember the Mr. Prince one with Sanji?
That was a while ago, right?
Yeah. It was like the Mr. Prince, and he had like the secret in like a in like a briefcase. I don't remember where,
but like the image is coming to my head.
Yeah. It was like one of those where it's like he has a briefcase, it's a secret, and he's like headed north, you know, and like things like that. So it's weird. I think Oda is definitely gonna, because of how much time we've spent with the story and just understanding and knowing a bit of how he is, he's gonna throw things in like secrets and hints in cover spreads and cover stories, but it's not going to be in every cover spread, you know? Yeah. So that's something I've had to kind of understand.
I was just looking at this color spread, and the thing that I was just like, Oda likes color coordination. Like he obviously does that with like his characters in general, but like, so I just was like, I don't know, like Usopp and Zoro, like they're matching. I'm like, have they had like, besides Enies Lobby, like they didn't really have like things together, right? And then you see Chopper, Robin, and Frankie, they're wearing black. I'm like, are they gonna split up? And then we've already been seeing Robin and Frankie like, you know, having more of a relationship now, but like not like romantic. I don't know, like people think like it's romantically, but I'm just like, or they could just be good friends, like that could be it too.
Depends.
But like there's more ways to the how they relate. But and then I also thought about like those three are the like the scientific people, like, you know, they're more on the history. So I was like, is the next like they're gonna split up and do like some kind of sciencey thing? I'm not sure. And then you see like Red with Brooke, Sanji, and Nami, and that's like an interesting combo too. And then obviously the yellow ones. I was like, why is there a tiger here? That's so interesting. I mean, he's been throwing in tigers and lions for a while now.
Yes.
And
so, do you think Tiger Man is coming Gear 4?
You know what? Sometimes it feels like. It feels like he's just like, I heard the community. He came out in the SBS for Volume 101, and he said like, he likes the YouTubers and stuff, their theories. He didn't say yay or nay to certain things, but he said like some people are really knowledgeable, and he just has to like push forward knowing that most of the base isn't like thinking that like cerebrally about the things, right? But I feel like maybe he watched those things, he's like, yo, I'm gonna mess with them and put this tiger in like every other cover or whatever.
No, for sure. No, I like that. I did see that. I think I did make a video about it where it's like Oda saying he's seen something, he's like, all right, I'm not gonna watch anymore. But like, you know, you understand this a bit more because now you're making more content. I'm sure you're doing a lot more research where you're looking at things a lot differently than you did when you were just watching, right? Because it's now you're like, okay, you're just making connections, right? So you're watching something like, hold on, let me go back and look at this again. Where again, I have a friend that's super casual, and for him, like, he's like, wait, what? I didn't think about that at all. It's like, I'm just like, you know, you're just enjoying the story. So, you know, Oda has a very, you know, it's a fine line, and it's a balance. It's a medium he has to navigate through, where it's like, okay, I want to make it interesting for both, right? I want to make it interesting for the people that are diehards, but also I don't want to make it too complex so the casuals are like, huh?
Yeah,
like what is going on, you know? And I want to explain it enough so the casuals understand, but not like too much where the diehards are like, okay, you're fucking over explaining. We saw this coming. And that happens a lot, right? There's a bit of that in chapters where we're like, okay, like that was clear. And then sometimes we're like, okay, maybe we needed a bit more of explanation on this one because that was kind of, you know. So I think it's a delicate balance, and I'm sure now he's come out and said that he's watched YouTubers and shit like that. It makes a lot more sense where, you know, when he does things like that, where it's like an explanation and then sometimes just a hint, and it's like, we got to figure it out, you know?
Yeah. I think, wow, I lost my train of thought, but, with
you can get to King if you want to.
Well, I was just gonna, I remember with the whole, I think that's what makes One Piece really awesome, is because you can be casual, you can be try hard. There's so many degrees to it. And for me, like, what you were saying about, like, you know, after starting to make content, I looked at things differently. For me, it's kind of, I started realizing this later on, where it's like you're in your own bubble kind of thing. For me, I always, like, my brain's just on fire all the time. So whenever I read anything, it's just like disconnection, that connection, and that's just like a natural setting for me. Whereas like when I'm making the content now, I'm just more like, how do I explain this to people though? Because like for a long time, I was fine with these thoughts inside my head, but now communicating outward, you gotta share it. So it's like I would say that I've always been like that, but it took on a life of its own after I started making content. Because like you said, now I have to explain these things, right? And sometimes things sound a lot better in my head, right? Yeah, when I say it out loud, I'm like, what the fuck? 100%. Outside of One Piece, I do that all the time with my wife. I'm just like, I say a line, she's like, huh? And then I had to go explain myself, because then she's like wondering why I said that. And then I'm like, all right, it sounded better in my head, but like now I have that like 30-minute explanation for what I meant by it, you know?
No, that's dope. That's dope. King.
Yeah, King.
The fight is over. Wait, what did you think about the King versus Zoro fight?
Okay. All right. I said this in my chapter reaction thing where I felt like Zoro's real fight was with Enma. And I'm not saying Enma is a nerf. I'm not saying Enma made him weaker. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in the fight, like, Enma was a bigger problem than King. And then the other side of it was that in terms of the fight, it kind of annoyed me. Because we got this whole like Zoro learned how King's flame and defense thing worked, right?
Yes.
And then in the last panel, like, so earlier in that chapter, I think it was last chapter. Yeah, last chapter at the beginning, he does the magma imperial flame, and he has his flame on. And then at the end of the thing, he does the same move, and he just doesn't have his flame on. And I'm just like, why didn't he have his flame on? That gave Zoro the opening to win. Of course Zoro would win. Like, he gave him the opening, like, you know? And so for me, it kind of felt like, and we could talk about Katakuri later, but like, you know, in Katakuri's fight, it was kind of like
the stickiness didn't work, and then all this different stuff stopped happening.
And like, but then also like Katakuri kind of, he did it on purpose, where he was kind of fighting at Luffy's level to like show him despair, like show him that like, I can match you and beat you at everything that you can do. So whatever you can do, I will do, but I will do better. Right. So whereas like, so you get this understanding
him early.
Right. And so Katakuri losing at a certain point is like, great, like Luffy got stronger, blah blah blah, but it still feels like we haven't seen Katakuri's 100, right? Whereas here it feels like we saw King's upper limit, and it came down to like a fighting mistake a little bit. And
that's an interesting perspective. I felt somewhat satisfied with the fight based on what it was in comparison to what Sanji versus Queen, right? Where I felt like I enjoyed more of the flashback. I'm not gonna lie, and his connection to Kaido and all that. As opposed to the Zoro thing, because it does feel okay. In regards, when we think about the panel time it took up, it was, you know, it was a decent amount of time. However, the satisfaction of this fight wasn't necessarily there, because we had been waiting for this. For a long time. Like a long time we've been waiting for Zoro to be challenged. Now, I didn't want Zoro to lose, right? Whereas versus Katakuri, I felt like Luffy deserved to lose. Whereas here, I didn't feel like it was Zoro deserving to lose. It was more so like,
how hard is it going to be?
Yeah, how hard is it going to be? And I felt like the Enma stuff, like you said, it almost overshadowed the fight in a way, because it felt like once Zoro mastered Enma, it was like, okay, the fight, it got flipped. And then King's Tell, I was like, it's a bit too simple, right? It was just like, okay, the flame on, flame off. And then it was not in line with what Zoro said initially about, okay, I have to find out pretty much what he is so I can defeat him, right? And so it wasn't necessarily about him finding out his race. It's just like he found out how King fights and the different nuances of his abilities. So I guess it's because he's a Lunarian, but, you know, he could have figured that out without knowing, like, he's a Lunarian. It never really got fleshed out in any way. So the fight is choppy.
I was expecting this to be where we learn about Lunarians, like through this fight, like Zoro would learn. But like, so now we still have this, like, what are Lunarians? Like, what are they actually? We learned more about Lunarians from Queen than we did from King. And I would have thought that through the flashbacks, at the least, we would learn more about it. But the flashbacks made it more confusing to me, honestly, about the Lunarians things. But that's a different.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how, just quickly, if you want to touch on it.
So I talked about this, I think it was in the last chapter, where Kaido, right? So they're being experimented on. They're did I don't know if another creator or anybody, did anyone sleuth where they were for when they were captured?
Punk Hazard.
Okay, so they're at Punk Hazard, right? Kaido comes up to him and is like, you're a Lunarian. The world government won't ever let you go, right?
Yeah.
And so that was really confusing to me, because the world government has a bounty on information about Lunarians.
Yes.
Meanwhile, they had King tied up to the thing. So they should know plenty about Lunarians. They were experimenting on him. So does that mean that the world government didn't know he was Lunarian and Kaido did? That's what it kind of feels like, because why would you have an information bounty where the bounty is 100 million berries, right? Like, so if they knew King was Lunarian at the time and they were experimenting on him, then there's no need for that bounty. There's absolutely zero need for it. They should know a lot about Lunarians. So that whole sequence, I was like, wait, the world government doesn't know about Lunarians. They don't. At least they don't know King is a Lunarian. Kaido knew he was a Lunarian before anything, and we don't really get in. Like, you know, I would feel like King would, especially because it's been shown that he's the last surviving Lunarian, which I have a separate thought about. It was a manga only thing and not shown in the anime, but if he's the last surviving Lunarian, if someone came up to me and was like, "You're a Lunarian, right?" I'd be like, "Wait, how'd you know that? Like, what? You know how? You know what I mean?" So like that flashback made it more confusing about like what circumstance the Lunarian race has and is, and what's going on. Because I assumed that like they knew about him being a Lunarian, but it also kind of lines up because maybe the government didn't know Kaido was an Oni, and we find out he's an Oni now, and like we don't have connections there. So in my video I was saying like, oh, maybe they just were testing on the endurance part, and they just knew that Kaido had high endurance and King had high endurance, and there's probably other candidates, and those two were just the ones that survived, right? And so Kaido, knowing that he's an Oni, and maybe whatever knowledge he has from like rocks or those days, he knows about Lunarians, right? Because Whitebeard knew about Lunarians through an unknown. We don't know where Whitebeard found out like the Land of God stuff, but he seemed to have know about it. So it
maybe rocks, maybe.
Yeah, so it makes sense that since Kaido was with rocks, he knew about Lunarians, and that's how that whole situation where once Kaido was imprisoned and experimented on, all these people are being tested, other people die, King survives, it clicks in his brain like, oh, you must be the Lunarians that like everybody, like that Rocks was talking about, you know?
Yeah.
So again, but that like, back to what we were talking about, like finding out what Lunarians are, who they are. I thought that we would find out in this fight, but like you were saying, like I enjoyed the fight. I'm waiting. I think I said like probably it's going to be animated in like August, September of next year. I'm waiting for this fight because like you said, we've been waiting for this thing this whole time. Yeah. And going back to the whole like not like the Enma part overshadowing it, I feel like this whole like these fights kind of have like this like almost psychological barrier to them, where it's like this whole time, ever since the time skip, it's like Kaido's this scary person, everyone around him is scary, we don't want to mess with Kaido. Every arc it's like, bro, we're getting closer to Kaido, we're scared, blah blah blah. And then once we get to Wano, all the samurai, everybody, because Oden lost, right? I feel like most of the people don't know the circumstances of how Oden lost, they just know Oden lost. So it's like it instilled this fear that Kaido's this insurmountable, undefeatable person, right? And then even you look at Kaido's crew, all the people on his crew for the most part lost to Kaido, and because they lost, he's just like, you join my crew, right? And that's like fear in itself, right? Like, you lost to me, so now you're my subordinate, but in a different way. And it's kind of like this fight, just kind of like these fights kind of just like showed us that it's like their titles, these rumors, all these things, they don't mean shit, like, because it's just like they just, once they confronted it, they all Sanji and Zoro at least overcame them relatively, like not as hard as we thought they should have, I feel. And honestly, I feel like Sanji's fights and Zoro's fights, they both paralleled themselves in the sense that Zoro's biggest barrier, in my opinion, and I'm not saying that Enma was detrimental, he needed to go through Enma's like test to become stronger for sure, but that test is harder than fighting King. And in Sanji's case, it wasn't and I talk about this in my Sanji video, it wasn't the fight with Queen, it was like all the mental trauma that he was dealing with, right? Every step of the way, Queen kept on mentioning his family, and that's traumatic for him. And then once he like was like, my body's weird, am I becoming my family again? It was that mental battle that Sanji had to fight. That was the harder part. Once he got through, honestly, either way, whether he got through it in a positive or negative way, he would have rocked Queen, in my opinion. Like, he could have became the ruthless soldier, ripped him apart, or he could have kept his emotions, ripped him apart. Like, either way, it worked. You know what I mean? So the hard part there wasn't Queen, it was just him. And
that's the thing where that's not as satisfying. Where it feels like King and Queen are preparation for the true test, right? The true test, which would be the Blackbeard parts, we presume. Mm-hmm. But then even with that, the Blackbeard parts aren't as fleshed out. So when I think of the Blackbeard parts, I'm scared of Blackbeard, right? Yeah. Just I'm scared of Blackbeard because he's crazy. You are wary of Shiryu, right? Yeah. Because you understand what he was. I do think how he was portrayed a bit in the Pirate Islands Beehive with Moria was. I was like, it was just like, because he got in a free slash on Moria, but I guess he wasn't trying to kill him. It's just like they were trying to use him in a way. But for Shiryu, I think we need more from him, definitely. But
do you
for
think
the others,
from Wano?
I'm starting to think
kind of sounds Japanese.
It sounds like that, but I'm starting to think no, right? I'm starting to think no.
Yeah, I
wouldn't be. But no, it's something that a lot of people had mentioned. I was like, I don't know. But when I think of the others, it's just like, all right, they're level 6 prisoners, but from Burgess to Van Auger, Lafitte, it's Katarina Devon. It's like they could have all this potential. They could be really strong, but other than Blackbeard and Shiryu, I'm like, okay, who would be a good fight for Sanji? It would be Lafitte. More than likely Burgess is probably fighting Frankie, Jinbei, Avalo Pizarro, things like that. But I felt like based on how Kaido's crew was hyped up and basically saying it was a meritocracy, all these different things based on strength, you wanted, like, they passed out at the end, right? But you did not feel like, oh man, it was knockdown, drag out. Like it came down to the wire for these two. No, it felt like you said, Zoro had to overcome Enma and Sanji had to overcome Sanji, right? Yeah. And I just wish it was a bit more satisfying. And it's not even about the length of the fight, but I do think it was just one of those where it's like, all right, we got to wrap it up. We just got to wrap it up. And so, they were good fights, right? Yeah. Mostly Zoro versus King, but not as satisfying based on the buildup and how long it took to get here.
Yeah. I feel like it's also one of those things, again, you also said it was like in the anime, I think they're going to do it a lot differently.
Oh, it's going to be great.
With Kiku, like her whole emotional scene, right?
That was great. That was great.
If they do that to the Sanji stuff, right? Because in the Sanji thing, like that was all emotion stuff. So if they do that same way, where it's like building up this emotion, making it feel like really difficult, building up the anxiety, whatever, it's gonna hit a lot differently. And in the Zoro one, there's a similar thing there too, where he's just like, I feel like a sense that was kind of lost was like Zoro wants to be the greatest swordsman, right? And this sword was Oden's sword. And he's just like, Oden used this sword and he just was fine. Like he had this, it was as light as a feather or whatever, right? Like I feel like that in itself was kind of like underrepresented in the story, because for Zoro, that'd be kind of daunting, right? That Oden, this guy who died however many years ago, was this fucking strong, right? That I feel like that concept, like that, not despair, but like almost despair, like how much further is Mihawk? Well, he trained with Mihawk, but like then there's Oden, and then he's not able to meet up with the sword's demands. Like, what does that mean? I feel like if they do something like that might make it a little bit like crazier. But then on the other side of it, like I think you talked about King of Lightning, where it's like some of these panels in the Zoro fight were hard to keep up with.
Very hard to follow. Very hard to follow. And it's like, I'm assuming, it looks cool, but it's like, okay, wait, what's happening? What's the transition here? So in the anime, I expect it to look fantastic, but following it and reading, I'm like, okay. It's like it's one of those things where like you're reading through and you're like, all right, let me get to, I see these panels, but I'm trying to get to somewhere where it's like, it makes more sense what's happening.
The substance.
So it's, again, not a bad fight, but I just don't think, it's not automatically, this isn't Zoro's best fight.
Yeah. I will say I was more like, okay, this people might hurt me for this, but I would say I'm more disappointed in King more so than Queen, because Queen was set up in a way where it's like he's a calamity, not be like if he wasn't a troll, if he wasn't a straight out troll, he could have ended Onigashima, right? Like if Chopper wasn't there, he could have ended everything multiple times over just with his plague. He's just throwing out the antibody and so when you think about it, Queen, like, he's a scientist in terms of 1v1, like, you know, like, yeah, sure, he could be strong, but we already saw that, like, you know, Luffy kind of matches up, but like Luffy can't beat, like, yeah, Luffy himself can beat the virus stuff because he's Luffy, but like in the grand scheme of things, Queen shows up to any island, it's done. Like, he doesn't have to even lift a finger. That's what kind of makes him more scary in terms of 1v1. So I was already like, you know, Sanji should be able to like just beat him, but like how difficult, like, are they gonna make it? That's a separate thing. I wasn't so upset that Queen was like this, like, almost a meme character, because he was already seeming like a meme character. But King, because they set up Katakuri the way they did, I wanted a King to also have that, like, after he loses here, like, there's still maybe like 40% that we didn't see, but it doesn't feel like that. Whereas Katakuri, I genuinely feel like we didn't see like his upper ceiling because he didn't want us to see it. And
I think overall, when, you know, just from seeing comments and people in, you know, streams or whatever, people are more disappointed, or not disappointed, people don't view King in a necessarily positive light, right? You have some people that look at him like, oh my God, he took all these attacks from Zoro. His durability is insane, right? Him being a Lunarian and being able to take those attacks when the flame is on, it's impressive. And they look at that and his speed. But a lot of people do look at him now like, well, okay, it's fine, but he figured out what you could do and then he used it immediately, then he got defeated, right? If they feel like it's a bit disappointing, I do agree. I've been saying that Queen is a bit more scary. He would be scary with prep time, right? So if he knows who he's fighting, he can create something that would be devastating and a huge counter for you.
A little bit like, right? Batman, like real Batman now. right, the real one. Yeah, that's how I view Queen, because for him having the viruses and like the Germa stuff, like, he could create something that could be just devastating for anybody he fights because he's that smart, right? Right.
But in a 1v1, it's just, we see just based on his personality, he felt like it was priority at that point to get back at that woman than fighting Sanji, who had just disappeared. Right? It's just, you know, that's why, I mean, I understand your perspective with personality and how it matters sometimes with power scaling, because with Big Mom and her personality, how would that factor in when it comes down to a fight or situations like this? So that's interesting that you're more disappointed in King than Queen, but I think I might agree, because I'm not necessarily disappointed in Queen, because how he's been set up is kind of like, that's how the fight kind of should go, you know? Yeah. With King, I'm not sure if I'm disappointed, though. It's just things just should have been a bit better. And again, it's not about the length of the fight. That's not what the issue is here. It's just the build up and the expectation.
Yeah, I like Katakuri favorite, you know, like the way they
you're a Katakuri stan.
Yeah. And I feel like, because as a right hand of a Yonko, like, I don't know. I feel like there should... Not that Zoro shouldn't have been able to win, but like, if King were to show up later in the story, like, you know, obviously he's gonna be strong, but like, did we see everything from him? You know, like, does he improve?
So, I think what you're saying is, once Zoro figured out Enma, it was over.
Yeah. Oh, so I saw your King of Lightning thing with him, and so I think you guys asked this question. I want to ask you is...
would he beat him without Enma?
Not without Enma, because like I said, I think that the trial that Enma forced on Zoro, like, maybe it would have been a lot harder for Zoro to realize, like, I need to use Conquerors like this. I need to be like full throttle and do it like this, right? Yeah. I feel like that was necessary. Zoro needed to realize... I mean, Zoro's a little goofy that he didn't connect the dots between, like, the Kozuburo and, like, things much earlier. He's a little goofy for that, but, like... after the fight, after he already wins King. Now, just hypothetical, he has to fight King fresh. Him versus King. I don't think he needs Enma anymore. He learned how to fight like the way he did. Do you think that he would need Enma to win after the fight? Like, he already learned everything.
No,
right?
He wouldn't.
Right.
He wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it'd probably be an easier fight. A much easier fight.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, because then because with Enma's draining his soul pretty much, right? And it's like, if he just learns that like he needs to do this and he can like turn it off and on or whatever, he doesn't need to pass whatever test while fighting this, you know, right hand. Like, you know, that's what it is. It's like, imagine taking like a test while you're doing something. Like, that's just.
It's like passing a driving test while texting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, that doesn't. You're shafting yourself in both ways, right?
Okay, so does this make Zoro then stronger than we think, or King weaker than we think?
That's the debate, because I don't want King to be weaker than we think. I want King to be stronger. They did him dirty in the sense of like so in my chapter, the last chapter reaction, I was like, it felt like King lost already by the last thing, and they were gonna open up exactly the way they did. And for whatever reason, I was like, I don't want that. Like, and you know, I wasn't upset that it happened, right? I was just thinking like, they're making us feel like this because they did it with Queen, but that's not what's gonna happen with King here. And you know, but he's just kind of I felt like there was another leg to the fight, but then there wasn't.
Let me ask you this: do you think our perception of Katakuri versus King is completely different because he fought the main character and he got fleshed out more?
No, I think
a lot of people do feel like we hold Katakuri to a certain standard because he fought Luffy.
I also feel like the kinds of fights, right? Like who they're fighting matters, right? Like Zoro versus Luffy is going to be different than Zoro versus Sanji, right? Just because the weapons and all that stuff, like that's a different circumstances to fights. Yes. With Katakuri, right? Like the whole psychology of his fight, like the way he went into the fight was very different. Like I maybe I'm misremembering, but King was like, yo, I need to clean you up as fast as possible. Like, like, you know, I'm not trying to mess with you. You know what I mean? Like, whereas Katakuri
he was like, Katakuri was playing with his food.
Yeah,
but then King, but remember King shifted though, because King got to a point where he's like, okay, I guess I'll use a sword now.
Yeah, but he is also like, I'm not a swordsman too.
But
you know what I mean?
He's not a swordsman.
Actually, there was a small detail. I think it was in the last one where his sword is a normal sword, but then he did something and then he became a tooth sword.
Right.
I want to see that animated, but like, what did you think about that? That was weird.
So I believe we saw it at one point earlier in the fight, right? But him doing it here, it's like he was trying to, like pull Zoro or keep Zoro close so he could attack him with something else again.
Yeah.
I think the thing with that scene that's confusing is, the Conqueror's Haki clash or whatever that was, right? Where do you think it was Conqueror's Haki, or do you think it was, or do you think they both use Conqueror's Haki, or do you think it's a situation where Zoro just pushed off using Conqueror's Haki?
That's another thing. Why wasn't King's Conqueror's, if he has it, why wasn't it more apparent? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he should have it.
He should have it, right? His name is King. You know, it'd be a huge misstep if someone named King, who just casually scoffed at Zoro using Conqueror's Haki, just doesn't have Conqueror's Haki. But if he does, it was never highlighted.
Right. And so if that scene was Conqueror's Haki, they're going to obviously show it way more in the anime. But it's kind of upsetting that they didn't make it more apparent. And like, maybe Oda's just like, his name is King, guys. Like, he has Conquerors, you know, like, but
maybe that's one of those things, right? Where it's obvious, but why not have him use it? Especially when Zoro at this point
is like learning.
He's learning it and trying to figure it out as well.
It would make sense if he was like bouncing off of somebody else who was using it,
who knows how to use it. You know, right. So again, it feels like it feels rushed in the sense of just the sequence of events and not necessarily time spent with the fight.
Yeah, I think
like
there's like not questions, but 3 points here. It's weird. Like, all right, does Mihawk not have Conquerors? Because like,
I think he definitely has to. So in my opinion, yeah.
Because what's his face? Rayleigh showed Luffy Conquerors, right?
Yes.
Did Zoro like not ever not
see
exposed?
coding or anything?
Like, so does that mean all the time that he was like training with Mihawk just is like, yeah, you're not. I don't even need to use.
I don't need to use coding at all.
And he just never like, maybe Zoro's just goofy and just didn't realize, and he was, and he's like, what is that? I don't know what that is.
So it may be a situation. Okay. So
because
okay,
if Zoro's exposed to Conquerors, it should have been with Mihawk. If Mihawk, yes. I mean, Mihawk should have it. And so this goes into my other thing, like how King should have Conquerors, right? I've always thought this is like so out of pocket. How come there are no fishmen that have Conquerors? There's no fishmen that have Conquerors. Fisher Tiger never showed it. Jinbei, how come Jinbei doesn't have Conquerors? And I'll be like, I have this idea that like the Straw Hats, people might be upset, but like the Straw Hats might all have Conquerors. Maybe they all don't.
Oh,
but,
wow. All
but
of them?
in some ways, I'm not saying they all will, but I can I can make a video that can be convincing for all of them. But that being said, I can't make a video about Jinbei making it, because it's like he's however many years old. Like, it'd be so weird if he randomly got it now. And like maybe Oda gives an explanation, but like it's also upsetting to me that there's no fishmen with Conquerors. You know what I mean? That's upsetting.
Because they're fishmen.
Like, to fishmen mink, like I don't know. Like, is Oda like
that goes back to the point that it's funny that you're saying more people should have it, but on Twitter recently people were complaining that too many people have it, which I'm like, bro, a lot of people don't have it at all.
yeah I mean, we're in like the very center of the world where everything's supposed to be happening, right? Like, right. There's a whole 90% of the world that doesn't have it. Like, and if they do, like, if they have Conquerors, they're showing up in the Grand Line and the New World. Like, that's kind of what we're understanding, because like if you're a conqueror, you gravitate towards conquering things, and where do you conquer things? The center of the world, right?
Yeah Some it may seem concentrated because we're fighting against the strongest of the strongest at this point. Yeah. So, you know, and but like, in the grand scheme, like a lot of people don't have it at all.
And it's not, people think that there's too many, but like, bro, King should have it. King should have it. His name
he
is
should
King.
have it.
Like,
his name is King. He should have it.
He's the last Lunarian, apparently. How is he not gonna have? Maybe he survived because he has. Like, I don't know. They have. He survived
because he is a different. He is like the special one. But
yeah, like at this point now I just said he's the last Lunarian surviving, right? But he lost to Zoro. So like what happened to the rest of the people? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of weird because there's stronger people than Zoro, right? Like, even with this power up, there's way stronger people. Like, I think in your video said that like Zoro could jump 5 spaces once he learns Conqueror's coding, but like so that's like, and back in the day there's probably a lot of other stronger people we don't even know about, and they wiped out the Lunarians, or who wiped out the Lunarians, we don't know. But King's here, he should have Conquerors. Like, he's the last one, you know.
I agree 100%. I do think though, or what do you think about Zoro's opponents? And
all right, Oda, so out. This was a recent thing, right? Where Oda comes out of. I was talking to somebody like a lot of the videos I'm making, right? I like, you know, I'm connecting to real world stuff, psychology, history, those kinds of things, and it's like, do they learn about all these things in Japan? Like, Oda's from Japan. Like, I want to know how, like, does his childhood just reading all these things? Because a lot of the perspectives that he puts into these things, it almost feels like an American perspective. Because like the way like Fishman Island and like, you know, overall like Black Lives Matter, like those kinds of concepts, it's like, I feel like that's more concentrated in America, and sometimes it feels like Oda's actually addressing these things, and I feel like it was so out of pocket that he like said that Zoro would be a cop if he wasn't a pirate. That was so like, is he Oda's American for saying that, right? Like,
hey, listen, people try to persecute me for just pointing out what's happening. I'm not making these things happen, okay? I think I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and we just randomly thought of Mr. Five. It was like, yeah, who defeated Mr. Five? And yeah, man, it was our boy. Our boy defeated Mr. Five. And listen, I'm not gonna say what, you know, that Zoro is what it is, but every single time, man, every single time, he just.
I was hoping King was not like I was like, he had Black Force energy, you know, like he did, and so it's like, fuck, like it's not a meme anymore, because that meme came out before King was revealed. Like,
yes, it did.
I think the whole meme surrounded like, yo, King is probably black, like, and Zoro's a cop, like.
Yeah, it did. It came out before that, and yeah, it just continued to. It continues to spiral.
So then the real question is, who's he really fighting on the Blackbeard Pirates? Is it actually Shiryu? I don't think does he have melanin?
Shiryu, he has a little tint to him, a little bit. He has a little tint to him. So
are we really going to be predicting One Piece based off of that? Just Oda shading it in a little bit more?
Somebody said that once they meet Shanks, Usopp will be going towards his dad, and Zoro's going to say, no, I got him. I don't like how he looks. So I think, you know, I don't know. We got to see where it goes. But I just think that whole thing is hilarious, how it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're not making that up. You're just pointing out facts.
I'm just pointing out what's happening. You know what I mean? Okay, I guess something I wanted to ask you, because shit, we've been talking for a long time now. We haven't gotten through it.
We're on the second page.
Right, second page. Kaido and King, right?
Yeah.
King's original goal was, or he's following Kaido because Kaido can change the world.
Right.
Kaido said to him, you think I'm Joy Boy? Is the world I'm making really the world you wanted? Right?
Yeah.
Where it's almost as if Kaido's saying, like, you know what I'm making right now, the world that I want isn't really what you initially wanted, right? Like, he's almost like laughing, like, that's not what you wanted. I know that because we talked about this. So, but then King just said, well, you know, it doesn't matter what you do. I owe you my life. Just keep being the strongest. Which is a bit sad.
Yeah.
To me, because it's like he kind of threw away his wants and his needs and his goals. And it's just like, well, I owe you my life. Just keep being strong. You know, and I thought it would have him being Lunarian and what happened to him and him following Kaido to change the world would be a bigger part of him, but it seems like it doesn't matter anymore. Of course, as you grow, things change and, you know, priorities, you know, change, but it was almost like he was just conceding, like, you know, just whatever, I owe you my life.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to like what time period that was, because that like obviously was
it's back then. They were younger.
So when they first met up at Punk Hazard, that was at the very beginning, right? And then this, how many years after that one was this one? Because I think like Oda's trying to show us through their hair a little bit.
Yeah, and Kaido's facial hair as well.
Yeah, but like we don't know. Maybe in the anime they'll tell us like 10 years ago or 7.
Yeah,
you know, however many years ago. But I think what you're saying, like it being sad, that was the same feeling, because like when you think about it, right, like just like putting this in perspective of like Luffy and Zoro, I was almost saying, you know how Oda put out I think it's SBS primarily, where he was like, this is what the Straw Hat will look like in a good timeline, this is what they look like in a bad
if they
timeline,
failed, right?
And it almost feels like King and Kaido are Luffy, Zoro in the bad timeline, where well, not wholly Luffy. Maybe it's also like a mixture of Roger, Luffy too, where it's like if Roger didn't meet his goals, like Rayleigh would probably.
They come to the realization, come to the realization that this isn't like, I'm not who you think I am.
Yeah.
You know?
Whereas like Rayleigh didn't have, at least from what we know, he doesn't have like his own ambition. He's kind of just like, sure, let's do it. You know what I mean? And then afterwards, he just like wants to hang out with friends. Like I want him to see Crocus. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's just chilling. He doesn't care about like changing history. Whereas Zoro has his own ambition. He wants to be the greatest swordsman. So if Luffy like messed around like Kaido did, then like Zoro would be more inclined to setting him straight. And we saw that like on Punk Hazard when like Luffy lost to Caesar because of like a hack's move. Zoro was like pretty pissed. He's like, what, bro, we're here, like we can't lose, you know what I mean? And whereas like with King, he's kind of like, you saved my life, so it doesn't matter. And like I was thinking of how upsetting it is, because it's like Kaido now, like I constantly tell people like Kaido's kind of like a mafia head who's like an abusive dad who's not present, and then he's also an alcoholic. And when you think about it, that's exactly what he is. And so it's kind of like, where did that spiral happen? Like, did Kaido like realize how futile his dream is, and then he spiraled into this like depression where we've seen Kaido crying because Doflamingo lost, and so he started crying. He was drunk, but he was crying, and he's just like this alcoholic guy. And then on top of that, the intro scene to Kaido, we see him, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this word on YouTube, but he's like unaliving himself, right? And so like you got to think like, as this guy King, that you're tied to this man's dream, seeing this guy spiral out of like, you know, doing those things, jumping off of a sky island and then becoming an alcoholic. And then you even see King, like he called the Tobiropo to manage Kaido's family, you know what I mean? Like, so like that is like one of those things where it's like probably King, like in terms of like going back to the whole like personality and fighting thing, I was thinking like the other part of King Queen not being as strong as they were is because like they probably got complacent. They were stuck on Wano, or stuck from what we know. But like, how long ago did they give up on these aspirations and they just kind of stayed the same? And then King's here managing Kaido's like
the small family squabbles.
Yeah, and like mistakes and mess ups just because he feels like he's obligated to, you know, almost in a sense like I don't know.
This is not what I really want, but I'm doing it because I owe you my life.
Yeah, whereas I don't think, like, even though they drew a parallel between Zoro and King, I don't think Zoro would do the things the same way as Luffy. Like, they would be, I would see them as like dope friends, but they would fight each other. You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing this? You know what I mean? Almost kind of like the intervention Jinbei had with Luffy after Marineford, right? Like get your shit together, that kind of thing. You know?
I mean, even for Queen, like, we talk about if things went wrong, but he's now using all the Germa powers, right? It's like Sanji fell into this this hole of trying to prove his dad wrong. Yeah. So now he's like, I can use all of my brother's powers now. Like, what do you think? Like, just overly obsessed with Judge's approval, you know? So Queen could actually be
everybody else's approval, to be honest. I feel they made like Queen feel a little bit like Caesar, whereas Caesar was like, I'm better and I'm doing different things, whereas Queen's like, I can do everything they can do. Right.
Yeah, it's almost just, it's like you're trying to prove yourself to people that don't care. Yeah, you know? Yeah. And so I think that was the parallel Oda was trying to draw. Is just, I just wish, like you said, the King storyline, it does create this opening where it's like, man, King could be an amazing character, right? Yeah. But it wasn't enough time for that. He's just defeated now, and we move on, which, you know, hopefully there's some more information that comes out. Like you said, the stuff is interesting, where watching Kaido spiral out of control, you can't be okay with that. There's no way you can just accept that. Yeah. Right. Especially knowing where you came from. And if you're the last Lunarian, there has to be some vengeance within you, right? Where you're like, shit, I want to get him back. So, you know, that's like something he wasted that's really his life.
Like, I'm the last Lunarian, and here I am taking care of like this.
I'm taking care of like your daughter that wants to be. You know, it's just interesting concepts like that. I would like, you know, to be explored more. But you have to kind of realize just timing and where things are going. Where it's not going to play out the way we want.
I think we might get some things, but through Kaido. It depends on what happens with Kaido. But we can talk about that at the end of this chapter, because that's where we circle back to Kaido specifically. Yeah.
I guess for these things, it was updates for the most part. Updates of Big Mom, Kaido, Kid. Big Mom, Kid, Law. Also updates with the All-Stars and the Flying Six, which is interesting because it went from okay, yeah, King lost, Queen lost, no way, but then again, the Yonko is still standing, so it really doesn't matter. How do you feel about that?
What? No.
Okay. I was like, what? Like, it was almost as if they're trying to be willfully ignorant, right? It's like, okay, you've been saying, okay, the numbers was an issue. The numbers are shifting greatly. Then you talk about, they did say even if you defeat all the officers or whatever, you got to defeat all the smaller people. But you cannot tell me that now after King and Queen and Jack, they've lost. It's still like, oh, they're meaningless.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like, it's trying to force you to feel like, oh, well, I guess they still could lose, right? Like, I guess they could still fail here. But, bro, have they been looking at all at the Luffy fight? Because when we jump to the Luffy fight, it seems like Luffy is holding his own, if not getting the better of Kaido, because he's still in his base form, you know? So it's almost as if Oda is trying to tell you, oh, there's still a doubt or something that they could still lose to the Yonko, which there's no fucking way. And it's almost as if it's like, it wants me to be intentionally ignorant, like CP0 is being. It's almost as I didn't like that necessarily.
Yeah. So I agree. So this part was a little confusing to me too, because like, to me, going back to the panel where King goes like, you be the strongest and I'll never lose, right? I feel like that was almost foreshadow to Kaido losing, because King lost. King just lost, so now Kaido won't be the strongest anymore. Why won't he be the strongest? Because he's fighting Luffy, and Luffy's gonna win. And like, that's kind of the feeling. Like Queen and King, relatively, like the majority of their fight was done in the chapter, you know. And I'm not saying that's gonna happen with Kaido. I low-key hope. I think in the Katakuri fight, it was like 20 chapters it like spread over, where we kept on going back to different things, but I don't see them doing that with this time around, because it's like everything's focused.
Everything is pretty much everything probably will be wrapped up. So
and they'll do it all consolidated almost. Like there'll probably be some things here and there going to Momo and Yamato and probably the CP0, but like for the most part, when it's Luffy Kaido fight, it's gonna be Luffy Kaido fight. But so after seeing that little bit of foreshadow that Kaido's gonna lose anyways, this one felt like because I've been talking about the CP0 and I'm just like, they just feel weird here. Like it's the story trying to make it maybe build some tension for you to say, oh well, I guess they could still. Or another perspective is that they're just showing you just how the Yonko are still just like on another level, right? You know, and they haven't been wrong. CP0 is like, Jinbei is gonna win, right? Like they already knew that. They did say that. They did say that. Hey, who knows if you're gonna get and the things that they were Jinbei. Wrong about. It's like, all right, they couldn't predict Tama coming in with the dumplings, no way. Right? Like
no way.
For the most part, they were accurate. It's just kind of like at this point, after all, like, you know what I mean? It's being a little stubborn. Like, I don't know if I were in their shoes, I'd say the same things, you know? And
because I'd be like, okay, all right, I understand the Yonko is still fucking incredible. And again, I think this is probably more to the Yonko's credit than CP0 being fucking idiots, because like you said, they've been accurate.
Yeah.
But it's still just like, it's a bit more worrisome than they're letting on. Okay.
Yeah.
It's way more worrisome, but I would say the story did say, right, that we're at a point right now where it's what did it say, the era, it is basically the fate of an era will be decided.
Oh yeah
in the next few minutes. So that's why it's like CP0 is obviously wrong. I think that probably was the intention for them to, maybe they're looking at this too logically, right? Where they're like, the Yonko, they're the strongest, and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Where it's almost as if we know as the viewers, okay, that's bullshit, right? Because the fate of an era will be decided on this island in the next few minutes.
Right.
Meaning either Big Mom falls or Kaido falls, or both, more than likely.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, that part was just like, all right, CP0, you guys better like call for backup or start preparing, because Kaido and Big Mom, they're gonna fall. Like it's inevitable.
okay, so here, like you already kind of answered it, but the whole raid failing, what's you feel like it's not gonna fail, or like my perspective is more like, even if like they win or lose, it's not black and white, you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be gray area, but I don't think the overall feeling is gonna be like complete loss, like failure, because that would mean like Kaido, Big Mom win, whereas like I feel like they lose, but the Straw Hats probably also don't come out like 100%. It wouldn't make sense like 100% of the things that they wanted to 100% come true. Like there's gonna be some like tragic situation, right? Like Pedro dying at the end of the thing, like that he was tied to the Straw Hats, and like I'm not saying the equivalent is gonna happen here where someone like external, or like there might be some other thing that happens, but what do you feel? Do you feel like the raid's failing at this point?
Before I answer that, where did you first hear about the raid failing, and what do you know about it?
Okay, so we had talked about this before. I don't watch other creators. It's like a bunch of people have been asking me. So maybe like around when I like started posting, people would be like I know it was Morge that was, I'm not gonna put names on it, but I think that's where a lot of people were saying that the raid failing thing. And so like they're like, do you disagree with this guy? Like he's a huge. I was like, I mean, I'm just here making videos. I don't know, but so like yeah, and I'm not saying that he's wrong or anybody's wrong, and you know, but I feel like
you can
point,
say Morge is wrong. You can say he's wrong.
I'm saying at this point, right? What I said in my video was that the people who think that the raid is failing at this point sound like the CP0. That's what I said in my video, where it's like, how do you like? Maybe at the beginning you could like, I could you know, subscribe to the idea that maybe it fails, like, but at this point it kind of just doesn't feel like it's possible where it's like Luffy loses because Zoro Sanji just like wiped the floor, you know what I mean? Like, so it doesn't make sense for it to like every component is hinging on whether or not Kaido loses, right? And so like my answer, if the raid is failing, it's like, well, if everything's centered on Luffy and Kaido and we're feeling like Luffy's gonna overcome him, then to me the raid doesn't like fail, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think with the raid failing theory, it's, you know, it's taken on a life of its own, and Morge has explained in videos as to why he says the things he says and why he keeps saying it. And what's weird is a lot of these people that I see a bunch of people shit on it now, those same people that were, you know, chapter after chapter, they're like, oh, give Morge his W, give Morge his W. Yeah. Right? But I think the raid failing would mean that the Straw Hats would have to go back and regroup, in my opinion, and I don't see that happening.
Like a Kuma type of situation like that?
Something like that, right? Where they'd have to come back again. Got it. But I think if it was like some parameters, right? Whereas the raid failing means that Kaido doesn't lose, then I'm like, that's possible. Oda could do that, where Kaido doesn't necessarily lose to Luffy. Something else happens and takes him out. Yeah. But
or there's another way we could talk about it then, but continue.
But it feels like he's gonna lose. Right? Yeah. It just feels like it's over. It feels like at this point it's only a matter of time. Yeah. So, you know, that's how it feels right now.
Yeah. I like in the sense of losing, like I feel like winning and losing, a lot of people have like stark like expectations of what that word means, but when I say losing, I feel like the CP0's perspective of Kaido losing, I feel like they're dead wrong. Like it just doesn't make sense, and for them to hold on to the Yonko card still and be like, well, the Yonkos are here, I'm just like, I don't know.
Like, have you seen Luffy?
yeah.
Like, have you seen what's been happening? So, you know, no, I do think I think it's pretty much over. I think it's only a matter of time at this point. I guess, I mean, the only thing here, like we kind of touched on it, is Kaido and Luffy, and like I said, Luffy seems to be doing fine, if not getting the better of, and he's just in his base form, no transformation. So unless Kaido has another form available to him because he's back in hybrid, right? I don't know. Like, I really don't know what's next other than Kaido and Big Mom going down.
Yeah, the end part, right? So this whole chapter, right? I feel like we learned like Kaido changed, in my opinion, right? Like, because it feels like he started out like Roger, like Luffy, like he wanted to change the world, he wanted to do something, and maybe it came from a wholesome place. I don't know. Like, he was on the Rocks Pirates, so they were kind of like wonky, but like,
yeah, he seemed like he had good intentions at some point.
Yeah. Whether like the good intentions are good in the grand scheme of like we're here rooting for a pirate, right? Like, pirates aren't inherently good, right? You know what I mean? So like Kaido's intentions might not be great in the world government scheme or like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, but it was like a wholesome place, I guess. And so the part that really stuck to me is it's like throughout the time that we've seen, I think every single like inflection point in Kaido's character, he always brings up Joy Boy. Like, he has some kind of like affection or tie to Joy Boy. And I feel like he's very aware that he's not Joy Boy, as we saw like in the flashback, we don't know how many years ago, but he's like, you really think I'm Joy Boy? And he's like, you know, and then now when he's talking to Luffy, he's like, you're not Joy Boy, right? And he's like, it feels like he's searching for Joy Boy. And like, it's just like this weird thing where it's like at the end of the chapter, at the very end, where they're like smiling, they're laughing, does it feel like there's a world where Kaido realizes Luffy, or like, I'm not saying Luffy's Joy Boy. I have this weird, like, I don't like putting like commitments on who Joy Boy is. I feel like it's very like in the air, and it will be for a long time. We don't have that much information, but like, he feels like Luffy's Joy Boy, and then he's just like, when you think about everything that he's done, it kind of feels like he did it for Joy Boy. Like, when you think about like Joy Boy, what we know of Joy Boy, right? Like, in this chapter, we find out that his determination for Joy Boy is some form of changing the world, right? But the previous contingency was in Fishman Island. Joy Boy was supposed to rescue Fishman Island, or like some transport people in some sense, right, on Noah. That was like one of his promises. But the other thing through Oden and Roger was that Joy Boy is supposed to show up to Wano, and Wano should be open by then. And it's like, so then you don't know why Joy Boy is going there, or what he needs from there, or what's going on. Maybe Noah's going there. But the whole premise of Kaido was opening up Wano, just in a twisted sense. If he thought that Joy Boy needed to take over the world, right? If I was Kaido and I was like a Joy Boy stan, and I'm like, okay, if Joy Boy is going to bring change to the world, remake the world, he's going to need weapons. He's going to need an army. He's going to need a headquarters. He's going to need a fortress. That's everything he's amassing, right? Like, he chose Wano because the world government can't access that easily.
But also, I'm sure there's deeper ties to Wano in regards to Joy Boy. Maybe he knows about them. Joy Boy, the world is waiting for Joy Boy in Wano. Maybe he knows about that.
Right. And then,
because remember he said to Yamato, like, you're ignorant. You don't understand why Wano is important.
Yeah, and also Sengoku and Garp are talking about it. Like, or I think mainly Garp was saying like, he was talking to Kainu like, you're a fool to think like you should study history because Wano is important. There's a reason why all the big names are gathering there. Yeah, right? Yeah, and like,
so you're saying Kaido is gonna be a part of Luffy's Grand Fleet?
I don't know about the Grand Fleet, but like, it's just so weird. This chapter changed a lot of like Kaido's like end goal, where it's like obviously he's evil, right? Because this is another contrast, right? Like, Luffy's saying like, this is getting good, and then they're laughing, they're having fun, right? But like, all this time, like, Kaido has been like completely shafting Wano, starving them, did all this awful stuff, right? I kind of think about that like Doflamingo, right? Like, Luffy saw all the hardships he put on that island, everyone he affected, everyone he destroyed. And I don't think, from memory, Doflamingo and Luffy ever had an interaction where they, like, Luffy always was like, I'm going to
kick your ass.
Yeah. Whereas here, it's like this weird thing.
There's
like,
almost respect.
Yeah, and it's like, if you really hated him, then this panel wouldn't have happened, even if you were enjoying the thing. You know what I mean? Like, because Luffy likes fighting. We know that. But while he's fighting Doflamingo, there was no, like, pause, you're pretty dope. You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing like that. Whereas in this chapter, really, like, we got the backstory that changed things. Now, I don't know about you, but I never really like thought that Kaido would ever feel like Roger or Luffy at any point like that, you know what I mean? But then it felt like it. And then here he's like sitting there enjoying. I was like, to me it felt like the end of like Katakuri's fight, whereas Katakuri, I always say that Katakuri kind of like low-key likes Luffy like in a bromance kind of way, where he's just like at his last words are like, are you really gonna come back and beat Big Mom, you know? And Luffy's like, 100%, and Katakuri's like, all right, dope, and he just falls over, right? Like, and I think, I'm not sure if he was smiling, I don't remember, but it seemed like the sentiment was like he was content, whereas here it's like it feels like if he treated him like Doflamingo, this scene wouldn't happen. If it ends up like Katakuri, where like I can see a world where Katakuri sides with Luffy in the future because of the way the fight went, you know? And because of that feeling, I'm like, maybe there's a world where Kaido, like, I don't know about joins the Grand Fleet, but like you don't have to join it to be like supportive in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. I would say that's something that I think we talked about in the last stream, that you know, with Kaido, it does feel a bit different. It feels like it's just a mutual respect. It feels like, hey, could Kaido help Luffy out against the world government? Because in a way, if Luffy is Joy Boy, then it's like, oh shit, like I've been looking up and trying to be this person. Maybe I should help him. Yeah. And then it aligns away with King's goals, because they would be changing the world. Yeah, you know,
so that's what really, like, once we saw King's thing, and it seems like King genuinely wanted to change the world. He just kind of like, he's the strongest, so I'm gonna stay with him, right? So if you see Luffy wins and Kaido respects him, King's gonna bring that loyalty over, right? Like, it's one of those weird things that I feel like Oda could do it, but it's also like,
I don't want it to happen though.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. It has to be, if they do it, it has to be executed really delicately.
Yeah, because Kaido joining Luffy's, he's not joining the Grand Fleet per se, but he's joining Luffy.
Yeah, and it
would have to be a situation where Kaido wins the 1v1, but then he's kind of like, he realizes that Luffy is the one or something, then he decides to help him. But even then, it's like, in my head, I can't navigate to the point that I'm okay with it.
So, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, this fight between Luffy and Kaido feels more like the Katakuri fight, in the sense of like, even if Luffy wins at this point, Kaido has been doing what? Like, he's been lifting an island. He's been fighting the whole Red Scabbards. He fought the Sulong Minks. Like, this dude went through a marathon.
He fought all of them. Yeah, you know, he fought all of them on the rooftop.
Luffy's just here for a sprint. And so even if he beats Kaido, in my mind, that's more similar to the Katakuri thing, where it's like, you redo this fight from start and Kaido might just beat you. Like, if Katakuri really wanted to win, he probably could have, you know what I mean? Like, that's the sentiment. I feel like that's the way the fight's going to end, where it's like, Luffy wins, but it's kind of like Luffy's like, damn, like
he could have ended
Kaido's. Yeah, Kaido could probably whoop my shit, you know?
Yeah, possibly. That'd be interesting to see if that actually happens. I think overall, how do you view the chapter? Like, I don't know if you rate the chapters typically.
I don't rate the chapters, but I did enjoy this chapter a lot. Like, even with, that's my thing. Like, I could nitpick at certain things, like this King fight, like how I'm not satisfied, or the CP0 saying wonky stuff like that. But like, at the end of the day, it's a good time. Like, this is a good, like, transition from things. I've been saying in my chapter reactions, like, every chapter is so exciting. And to be honest, my favorite part of this chapter wasn't any of the stuff we talked about, actually. It was the Usopp. The Usopp panels. I don't know if you skipped that on purpose to like save it to the end, but that was my favorite, because like it felt like, in so many ways, like, we're talking about parallels, but like Izo coming in here, that felt like Shanks coming into when Kobe like stood up for what he felt, and then Shanks was like, well said, like, for better or worse, you changed the thing. Like, Izo coming in here and like backing up Usopp, that felt like super powerful. And
no, it felt great. It felt great. It was a great moment.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, I've been waiting for Izo to show up, because I feel like he showed up like here, like one thing. I think he showed up in the anime, but I don't know if he was in, I forget, in the manga, if like he showed up like actually, like we saw him fighting. But we saw Marco fighting, and this whole time I'm like, there's two Whitebeard commanders here.
Well,
Where's Izo
he
at?
had subtle moments. One was when he shot the sword out of King's hand, things like that.
Yeah.
But he hasn't really had a solo moment necessarily. This was a moment where I think, what was surprising to me was he didn't have Whitebeard's mark.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I kind of like, this is, I'm gonna say it's a dyslexic moment, but when I was reading it and I was like, I wrote down Whitebeard's mark and I looked, I was like, that's not Whitebeard's mark. What is that? And then I was like, wait a second, he doesn't have Whitebeard's mark. What's going on?
Yeah. So it kind of tells you that he remained loyal to Wano, even though he was a part of the Whitebeard pirates. But it was just like, you didn't go back at all. Like you didn't, it just kind of left things as they are, which is interesting. But I think this is one of those things where for us that we read the series and we're trying to dissect everything, it's like that may get to like a possible nitpick. Oda probably didn't even think about something like that, where it's like, yeah, Izo don't go back for 20 years. That doesn't mean that Izo doesn't care about Wano.
Yeah. I think the mentality, I think not that they could have done it a little bit better, but the whole understanding was like, one, when Whitebeard deterred Ace from going, it was the understanding of like, bro, like Oden couldn't win, right? They don't know how Oden lost, but the understanding like Oden was Whitebeard's brother.
Powerful.
Everyone else is Whitebeard's son, right? So Oden's a step above and he lost. So Ace, you're not gonna do anything there, And then the other part of it is like, even if they all went, it wouldn't be what Oden wanted because a lot of people would die, right? Whereas this is a situation where Iso, it's like, not that it's convenient and like, but
people were dying regardless, though.
Yeah, and Luffy was the one he needed to, like, what would Izo do? Like, bring back the remnants? Like, we're gonna take on Kaido? You know what I mean? Like, they needed something bigger than that to come in, and it was like Luffy and the 9 scabbards, right?
They needed Whitebeard.
Yeah, Whitebeard showed up. The thing about it is like Whitebeard's power, like we never ever got to see like what he could do, because he was old, and then even when he was old, we saw him like dismantle the planet a little bit, and it's like, dude could have showed up to Wano, just lifted Onigashima, just like wiped it off the face of the earth. Like that's what it feels like if in prime Whitebeard, that's why he was so strong. Like I'm just imagining, that the Marineford scene where he slams both sides and then there's like 3 levels, like there's like water tectonic plates floating in the air almost.
Oh, the heaven and earth.
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. It was like he slammed both sides, and then you just saw like Marineford was tilted, and then 3 like panels of water was just like up. Like that was him weak. Like imagine him fucking strong and trying.
Bro, remember
and
the flashback when he just got angry and the sea started tilting? Remember like when Roger asked him for Oden, he just got mad and he saw the seas tilting, and it was just like, oh shit, I guess are you one of those people that you have old Whitebeard over at Kaido?
Old Whitebeard, like like current, the last we saw. I subscribe to the idea that all the old people are stronger, but like for a short period of time.
So they can't fight. They can't sustain
unless they're like aggravated, right? Like unless like that emotional aspect comes out, like where it's like I don't know. It's so weird because it's like I want to give respect. I have this weird thing in real life where like older people respect, you know what I mean? Like and like Garp, Rayleigh, like I feel like they're incredibly strong, but like
but I think they get that a lot in the community. That's why a lot of people do still have them over even some of the young up and comers that are really strong as well, because it's just like they think of these legends and it's just like, all right, they're old, but they're still really powerful. But how I view things, because I watch basketball, I'm just like, you're always going to have the older player that is more, they can probably best a young player for a while. But when it comes down to it, they cannot sustain that level of play because they're older, and that's kind of how I looked at Whitebeard, where from time to time, he can tap into that prime beard power, but consistently there was no way. It's just like, sometimes he's going to be like LeBron putting up 40 in a night, but, in general, he's going to be all right, So it's just, I do think Whitebeard at that point was the weakest Yonko, and I do think he would lose to, a couple of the admirals. But you know,
I feel like if you were to ask me like would Garp, like Garp said he would kill Akainu, right?
Cat.
Like, I feel like if he like normal, right? Like I don't think maybe there's not like that would be like extreme diff if it were possible, right? But after he was angry, like Garp would like the only reason why he would win is because he just would sacrifice his life to just it would be his vendetta to just murder this dude, right? Like that's where I kind of see it, where it's like if Rayleigh really, and I think about this scene where it's like Luffy, I think this is anime only, where Luffy gets Gear 4 and then Rayleigh just one shots it, right? And versus Gear 4 is not that like weak of a thing, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty strong, but then Rayleigh is able to just one shot, and I don't know if that's canon, that's debatable, but I feel like that's a scene where it would be canon, where Oda's like showing us like things of substance. But I think of those scenes, like if you got Rayleigh actually upset, which would be impossible, he doesn't really care about much, it feels like, but like if you got Rayleigh really upset, I think he could have like actually, you know, hurt Kizaru, for example, in Sabaody. Like he wasn't, I feel like in that situation Kizaru had the upper hand, you know what I mean? Like obviously Rayleigh wouldn't win that situation, but if Kizaru was sitting there like, I don't know, killing Shaki or something, he would pull out all the stops and just straight out stomp him. And that's where the like, power scaling is weird, because it's like if you bring in the emotion stuff, any of these characters can do anything if you give them the right circumstances. And the
I like that. Something I've been subscribed to is like the rubber band theory, where it's like you have two rubber bands and one's going up, one's going down. You pull both of them, right? For both characters. If say Kaido's the rubber band at the top and Luffy's the rubber band at the bottom, at some point they're going to intersect, right?
Yeah.
So say they intersect, and at one point Luffy could be above Kaido, and that could be the determining factor in victory.
Right.
So in One Piece, I think that's something that's clear, because when we talk about Whitebeard versus Akainu, we always say, well, you know, what was Oda supposed to do?
Yeah.
There, right? As much as Oda wanks Akainu outside of the story and within it, what was he supposed to do?
Yeah.
After Ace dies.
Yeah.
He can't, like, imagine if Whitebeard got all mad and all of a sudden Akainu just fucking destroys him still.
Right.
We'd be like, ugh. It wouldn't feel good at all. It would feel terrible. Like, damn. He was mad, Ace died, and he still couldn't do anything.
Yeah, and the way I see it too is like, you know, it's a gray area when two characters can hurt each other, right? And so you could see that they could hurt each other, right? Very clearly. I think the anime did it a little bit wonkier, where Akainu blew off half of his face in the
half
manga,
his mustache, yeah.
Right. Whereas
in the manga, his head.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, if those things were incorporated in the anime, people would probably be less disillusioned to the idea of, like, for one thing, Whitebeard already had like 2 holes in him. He got stabbed. Yeah. He's old. He had, like, we don't know what kind of sickness he has, but he's clearly on life support. Like, this dude shouldn't have been. The only reason why he hurt Akainu, I feel like, was because he was like super pissed. You know what I mean? But
he was super pissed and also like kind of snuck him.
Yeah, that too. Like, and so it's like, but the bigger part is like, even if he's like blitzed him, and the you know that Whitebeard's on the level because he hurt him, right? Like, you could blitz somebody and then it just doesn't do anything, right? Like, Zoro did that to King, and King took no damage, right? Like, because he had the flame on, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, so if you put that into perspective of like, if Whitebeard blitzed him and then Akainu just took no damage, then you kind of understand. And then this is another thing, and I think a lot of people kind of accept this at this point, and it's kind of more hairy when we're closer to the arc. But a lot of things pre-time skip were hard to demonstrate because we weren't being shown Haki in any form, right?
Right.
And it feels like Marineford was the introduction to, like, this is like the kind of wonkiness that like if you don't know what Haki is, you wouldn't really understand these fights, right? Whereas now that we know Haki, it's like, oh, Haki is probably used here, and here, and like, oh, that makes this make way more sense, right? And like, the concept of Haki changes how you see those fights now. I think one of the big things, and I'm making a video about this later on, was like, there was this one scene where all the admirals put up it seemed like a Haki force field.
The barrier. Yeah.
And it stopped Whitebeard's thing. Like, I can't tap back into my memory of when I first watched that and think like, what did I think like was happening there? Were they just like praying and like it just happened to, like, what happened there? You know, like without knowing.
I mean, I didn't think it was Haki with the first time I watched it.
Right. I mean, how could you?
Yeah, you know, Haki wasn't ingrained in our brains at that point. I just thought it was the admirals just
doing something crazy,
doing something cool, you know.
Yeah.
So it was like a force field that they created through pressure or something, just from being strong, and that's how they stopped it. But obviously now it's Haki. It's clearly Haki.
So like in that concept, right? I feel like I take a lot of things with a grain of salt with Marineford, and I think like if we were to blame Oda for messing things up, I'm just like, you know how hard it is to write a whole war arc, like hiding a teaser that you're gonna drop like the next arc. You know what I mean? Like that's hard. Yeah. That's really hard. He wrote all of that and didn't like Haki was talked about. Haki was there, like Impel Down, it was introduced and stuff like that, like Amazon Lily, like we got it, but like a whole thing where these characters who are now like end of series boss level people, like Whitebeard, the admirals, we were being shown them, but with like this like a blind over our eyes, like not understanding anything about powers, right? Like that's hard. That's really, really hard.
Yeah, no, I think Marineford is one of the greatest arcs shown in history, especially if you rule out the power scaling part, because the power scaling it was all over the place. It didn't really make sense.
And the realization is it's hard to do. It's hard to do.
Yeah, it's very hard because, like I said, the Whitebeard and the Kainu scene, it's narratively, there's nothing else that could really happen after Ace's death.
Yeah,
because you know, as a fan, even now going back, and I think Akainu was stronger. I'm like, I wanted that to happen. I wanted him to get clobbered. He just killed Ace.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then if that didn't happen, then how could we get the him and Teach moment, right? Or the One Piece is, you know, all that different stuff has to happen. So you got to get Akainu out the way and give Whitebeard that moment, right? Yeah. Where even though Akainu didn't die, he avenged Ace in a way, right? So
I feel like if that specific Akainu Whitebeard part where he just like slams his head down, I feel like if you were to go back and rewrite that a little bit, not rewrite it entirely, because like I agree with you, that's kind of like what needed to happen. I think if Akainu got hurt more, or like, I think this is the scene that I'm thinking about, like, you know, the Naruto Sasuke fight at the end where like Sasuke is about to like punch Naruto in the face, and then his Sharingan got wiped out, and then Naruto just like one tapped him into the wall, right? Like something like that, where like Whitebeard is like at this point in that part, he's pushing himself. It doesn't like, anger gets you to a certain point, his willpower like that. It would make sense if like he's like overexerting himself so hard that mid-fight, like you get the intention that might have ended Akainu, but it didn't, because he not ended like severely injured. Sorry, not ended. That shouldn't have happened. But like, you know, Akainu wouldn't have came out like completely like okay, but he never got hit by it because Whitebeard just like kind of like lost his halfway through the thing. And I feel like that could have been a cool way to show this kind of like disparity, where it's like they're at this level where like if you get hit by somebody, you get hit by them. It hurts. Like it doesn't make sense for someone to be like immune to certain things just because you're
those
stronger.
Those top tiers, I think it's, you know, you like you said, you can hurt each other, you know. So it's even the scene we saw with Whitebeard stabbing out Kiji, and he's like, oh, he used Haki, right? That's one time where they talked about it, and he's like, did they hurt him? And Kiji's like, don't be silly, right? That didn't work. And then he was about to do something, and here comes Jozu, right? So it's subtle things. I'm not sure how much Oda was thinking of power scaling, but it's just fun to talk about. In my opinion.
And again, like he had a lot of things on his mind for sure at Marineford.
There was a lot going on. Was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Before we end it, let's talk about my top 30 really quickly, because you said I had Katakuri or Doflamingo a bit low. Because I had Doflamingo at 27.
Yeah, 27. And I honestly, like, I want to. Did you ever post the 1 to 30 like on thing, or is it just in the video?
No, I never posted it.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna make a post. I'm probably not gonna show the entire thing on Twitter, because I'm probably gonna have a stream. But I just sent you my list.
Okay, because I didn't get enough time to like see, like I was like 27 is low, but let me see the rest of the thing. But by then I was like, I already was like, wait, who is this person should be? And I wasn't thinking about that. I was just watching the video, and I was like, you know, I obviously with power scaling, it's like you're right, he's right, we're all like, you know what I mean? Like it's just fun to think about. I think it just kind of like hit me in the face a little bit, and I agree though it's kind of weird because like Doflamingo to me, and you talked about it, like his power is versatile, and like if someone were to argue he'd be stronger, like I think that would be the basis. But also like I feel like Doflamingo has the potential to like learn
the advanced Conqueror's
coding, like real, like he if he's this versatile with strings, you can't like, you know what I mean? And
no, I agree.
And like, so when the 27, I was like, I get it because there's a lot of other characters, but I was like, damn, like I feel like he's gonna come back and he's gonna whoop, like
I hope so. I definitely hope so.
And the other part of it is like, if you watch my observation Haki video, I have this whole thing, and I'll just like very quickly say it. It's like observation Haki, like I kind of give a metaphysical analogy for it in the thing. We might be not seeing it, like kind of how like armament Haki, you know, I like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember armor Haki is only visible to the viewers, right? They're not seeing like full black armor, right?
It is so weird.
Because I remember reading that, but I forget. I like
the only thing that makes it weird is like, remember when Smoker saw Virgo?
Yeah.
And he was like shocked and shit. Like, it was like, okay, is he seeing?
Yeah.
Just how, you know what I mean? So it's weird.
Yeah,
it's
and then
weird.
Whereas we get this like recent Queen scene where Sanji withstands the sword attack, and he's like, that wasn't Haki, right? And it's like,
yeah.
If he didn't see it, then why would he question it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, I think armor Haki is not shown, and so I have that analogy for observation Haki, where it's really interesting because mantra, you know, the other name that they use on Skypiea, mantra translates to mind rope. So
okay.
And so in the video, I show all the demonstrations of how that mind rope thing connects. And I talk about it, one of the main examples in the Luffy Katakuri fight, but I won't talk about that right now. But the part that I was getting to is like, there's this weird connection with ropes in One Piece, like strings in One Piece. And so one of the things that like I tied it back to is in poneglyphs. When we were first shown poneglyphs, they had strings connecting all of the poneglyphs. And I was like, they could have shown that in so many different ways, but they used string. Like it was a scattered picture of poneglyphs, and then there was string going through. And at the end of the video, I was like so. And then the other example I talk in the video. And at this point, I'm just like, so you can run through the video if you ever get to it. But pudding, the memo. She had a power. It was called memory filament, where she just tied ropes, a string to everybody's like where their third eye would be, and gave them memories and gave them like somehow interacted with them, and it looked like string. And I was just like, this is really interesting because like the way they show string, and then you ask yourself like with Doflamingo, his power is the string fruit, and like at the end of the day it could just be string, but he himself showed us like his power is way more expansive than we think. And like one of the examples, like so not talking about the string fruit, but like Hawkins' fruit. His fruit is straw fruit, but then somehow he gets this like random power to like connect fates, and it's like that's a weird concept. So like, why not Doflamingo? And then you think birdcage was nonsense. Like, how come Zoro and Fujitora couldn't cut that? Like, that didn't make sense to me. It was indestructible, invincible. Why was an ability from this string fruit so strong and so oppressive that like swordsmen who are supposed to be able to cut anything can't cut it? And then what was even crazier, and this is where the observation Haki part connects back, is the other aspect of birdcage was that it blocked communications from Den Mushis. So the Navy couldn't talk outside, and it's like, how come these strings can do that, right? And so in that video I explain the connection, but the part where I'm bringing it up is like, the string fruit is like, I feel like there's like levels that we haven't seen, similar to Katakuri, where it's like Doflamingo himself said like, in terms of Haki, there's levels you haven't seen, and I feel like that applies to his fruit. I think that applies to so many things, and it's like, it's just mind blowing how like the time that we saw him, like he's a Conquerors, but he doesn't have Conquerors coding. He's advanced armament, but he doesn't know Rio. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do maybe we did see Rio. Maybe his flame string was a type of Haki. That's why I connected to elemental Haki, because like I'm looking at Doflamingo, I'm looking at all the things that he can do, and that's like kind of where like my elemental Haki theory and devil fruit theory kind of like connect. It's him, because his power is absurd. And so like I understood why you rated him low, because when we saw him it makes sense. I'm just like when I like think about matching him up to like other people, one of the things that really confused me was like he was one of the characters that had like this immense fear for Kaido, right? Like whenever he talked about Kaido, he was afraid, like, I don't want to mess up because Kaido's going to kill me, right? And I was thinking, like, does that mean that, like, Doflamingo's, like, that much weaker than, like, in the Beast Pirates? Like, is he afraid of Jack? Is he afraid of Queen? Is he afraid of King? Like, where does he rank himself? You know what I mean? Because it doesn't make sense for him to be, like, that afraid of Kaido. Like, yeah, being afraid of him, but, like, I feel like the strength that he showed, he shouldn't have been, like, terrified. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's for me, when I look at that Doflamingo and I think about Doflamingo's Kaido scene, I think about what Kaido could do to Doflamingo wasn't just about physical strength, but about if his biggest client isn't happy, right?
Yeah.
And something happens to his business, like he's ruined, right? It's not just about getting your ass whooped. It's like literally my business is ruined because that's my greatest client. And of course, a part of it as well is if I can fund this client, it ties into my goal, because ultimately he can fuck up the celestial dragons and the world government and destroy the world the way I want it to be destroyed. So it's just like it was everything at once. Mm-hmm. If you fuck up that, it's almost like if you own a business, right? Yeah. And you have clients, but you never want to lose your biggest client,
right.
because ultimately, like, that torpedoes your business. So, that's how I look at it.
The other part of that was, like, I mentioned Kaido was crying when he found out Doflamingo was taken down, right? But what he said was like it was because he's a weakling, and I was like, is he though? And then I think about it, it's like, yeah, if you took Dressrosa Luffy and fought Kaido, yeah, he's a weakling, right? Yeah. But it's just like a weird thing, because I feel like Doflamingo's stronger, and like I don't know if that's me wanting him to be stronger. Like I feel like Doflamingo's a character that comes back, and I hold him in a similar regard to like Katakuri, where I feel like maybe he's not going to be as strong as Katakuri for sure, but like he definitely gets stronger.
I mean, for the most part, like I can't take what Kaido says literal about Dofi being a weakling, because like he's weak in comparison to whom, right? And because Big Mom was something that they said Cracker was sent after they found out Luffy defeated Doflamingo, so people are like, oh, of course Cracker's stronger than Dofi because they sent Cracker after they said Luffy beat Dofi. I'm like, there's no way to know how strong Doflamingo is, right? It was just like, you know, it's a relative thing where it's like you beat Doflamingo, so I'm going to send Cracker. Like, you don't know the logistics of like strength in that regard. So it's like weird to use things like that. And I was talking to somebody and I was saying how Oda writes sometimes. He writes like if he doesn't know, right? Mm-hmm. He writes like if he's listening to the rumor mill. He is like,
I don't know if you know this fact, actually. Oda apparently said that, so the Wikipedia for One Piece is like phenomenal, like insane, like the footnotes, everything that's referenced. And apparently Oda came out and said he
uses it, right?
Yeah, he uses it for the move sets, so because he forgets what they're called.
He forgets it,
and he's like, "Wow, the Wikipedia is amazing," and I'm just like, "That's hilarious to me."
That's crazy, right?
Yeah. But continue. Yeah.
So for him, I think he writes from a perspective of, because he's such a secretive person when it comes to certain information, he almost writes as if, hey, I'm one of the guys and I'm just hearing things from this other person. So it's like sometimes when a character says something, can you take it in fact? Because One Piece is a world which is just, it's a lot of rumors build these character perspectives or how we perceive these characters, where Big Mom, how she's perceived, Kaido, how he's perceived, Shanks, right? Where we have this view of Shanks as the true pirate, this person that was on Gold Roger's ship, then we see him meeting with the Gorosei secretly. You know what I mean? So it's just like Whitebeard about like one of my favorite panels is when they showed Whitebeard for the first time, the world's strongest man. That was like that was a title, right? But then he's hooked up to all these different machines and shit. So it's just like, wait, it kind of like mind fucks you a bit, because then you're thinking, wait, the world's that's the world's strongest man.
Yeah.
That looks like he's on life support. Wait, what's going on here? You know, so I think Oda does this perspective versus perception versus reality a lot, and it plays into One Piece because, again, with Kaido, we expect something, then we go into it, and Kaido's he's an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so much more going on with him. So when Kaido says you're a weakling, it's like, is that something he's saying literally, or is he saying it because he's pissed and he's mad? You know, where it's like you're just fucking weak. We know Doflamingo's not weak, at all. You know, but it's just, you know, it's hard to look at things that said in the story and say, oh, that's absolute fact, because of how Oda writes. Sometimes it's like, oh, what people say, they say, and even though a character says something, they could be wrong. Right. You know, so it's interesting.
This is a good segue, because I just want to know. But so we got Katakuri, and we talked about Katakuri versus King, and how, like, you know, whether we're disappointed, whether we're sad, unsatisfied, whatever the word is, right? Do you feel like Doflamingo could? Do you feel like he could beat King?
No.
Or not, if not defeat, but do you think he gets like low diffed by King, mid diff? Like, what do you think?
It feels like, based on the things Doflamingo showed, Doflamingo's main problem, I think, when I think about him, is the fact that he couldn't damage Gear 4th. Right?
Okay.
That's the main issue with him, because he's fast, he was strong. It's just Oda made this weird thing where when he kicked Luffy, it was like, oh, it's rubber. Even though he's using Haki, it doesn't work. It was like, huh? What? But then he had Cracker was able to like just cut Luffy's Gear 4th and like like easily.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't think Doflamingo's strength is necessarily in just like one particular thing. It's just like he has a wide array of moves, and then when you look at the birdcage, you know, that's devastating. So,
I'm sitting here wondering, like, why, like, it's like one of those Queen moments where he could just like just throw up birdcage and just like chill.
And then just leave.
Yeah.
He
and then what is, like, Zoro couldn't cut it. Like, what's supposed to happen after that?
Because it's made from a clone. So at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like he has to be within the birdcage. That's something Oda could come out and say, oh, he had to be in there. But as far as we know, he didn't have to be in there. Would he beat King? Right now, I say no. I do think he would beat. I do have him over Queen. I have him over most of the what we would call the second commanders, Smoothie, Queen, you know, obviously Cracker, people like that, because he's so damn versatile. And he like with Parasite, things like that, is just like, you know, Luffy was able to break out of it, but we believe it's because of the immediate shift in size. But shit, Parasite controlled Jozu, you know, it's just like, you know, he has a wide array of abilities where it does make him difficult, and he has aerial advantage, you know, for someone like King can fly, you know, so he doesn't have the advantage there. Marco can fly, Sanji can fly. Those are people I have over him. But, you know, I'm putting him over certain commanders because he's shown that, you know, if he was one of Kaido's commanders, it'd be more difficult for them at this raid.
Right.
If he was there instead of, you know, Jack or Queen, I think it'd be like, if he could parasite a lot of the faction that was going against him. You know what I mean? Or like that would be crazy. So, you know, I have him over characters like that.
Yeah, I feel like when Doflamingo used his last move, did he coat his strings, like the pincers with
Haki
coated, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, dude comes back, there's no chance to me that he stays. Like, I think there's growth. I feel like,
is he gonna have a Crocodile moment, like where Crocodile came back in Marineford? And
that's
he was like,
what I'm thinking. Like that. I mean, Oda. I think Oda came out and said he did Crocodile and NL pretty dirty, but like,
because he thought the story was gonna end and shit like that.
Yeah. But like with Doflamingo, I don't think he did him dirty, but I do think that like after we see him, like he's sitting in Impel Down, like everybody apparently you go impel down, you come out stronger. Like I don't know, like
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. So he's definitely gonna come out stronger. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and so like, so again with your number, it was just I agree. I think I agreed with it by the end of the thing. It just kind of hit me in the face. I was like, dang, he's 27. I feel like after we're gonna see him, he's gonna be like up there.
He may, but it's like you said, we got introduced to a bunch of new characters like Yamato, King, and then giving Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji the more credit because they've gotten stronger. And even with that, I kind of combined really Sengoku and Garp, you know. So it's like if I didn't, Doflamingo would be all the way down in like 30, or 29. So it's, you know, and then even some people didn't have a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people. I say some people didn't agree with the placement because they feel like the story has passed Doflamingo by. Shoot, some people didn't agree with my Katakuri placement because they feel like it's jaded because he fought Luffy. I'm just like,
so they think Katakuri should be lower.
They feel like, a lot of people feel like Katakuri should be beneath Marco, beneath King, probably beneath Lucky Roo, beneath Sanji, shit like that.
That's interesting. So that's where the power scaling thing comes. Like it's interesting because like you're making these numbers, like you're not sitting here thinking like, does 24 beat 22, right? Are you thinking about it like that?
No, because we have Marco's at, or Kid is at 21, or Law is at 20, or rather we have Zoro at 18. I think there's a possibility Law at 20 could be Zoro, right?
Okay, yeah.
I think Zoro could be Katakuri, even though Katakuri is higher. I think Zoro could be Yamato, you know. It's just when you're looking at the list, it's about everything, the entire scenario. Like for instance, I have Sanji over Boa. Obviously, Sanji can't beat Boa, but I think in general he's stronger than Boa. You know,
I have in my video, I have a possible way he gets over that that way, and it's not like. It's not a complete ass pull either. It's kind of crazy to think about. And I was actually going to ask you, this is interesting because it's around Katakuri. A lot of people talk about whether Sanji, let's say Sanji now, Sanji versus Katakuri. What do you think?
Katakuri.
Katakuri. Okay.
Again, like I tell people all the time, how I view Katakuri may not be how you view Katakuri. But I just felt like in regards to combat, he's easily one of the best combatants we've seen in the story because he really didn't have any weaknesses other than the fact that he didn't get hit a lot, so maybe he wasn't used to it, whatever. But he fought Luffy for hours, the running back and forth, the speed, the power, the different forms, the fire, the future sight, arm and Haki, the different levels. It was all there. I think it came down to literally Luffy being a main character and Oda saying, like, if I have Luffy lose, then what? Like, he can't lose. So,
I feel like he did it skillfully though, because like that whole like emotional thing, like it was subtle, but like it definitely felt like Katakuri like gave an inch.
He gave up. He gave him the W. He gave him the W. I mean, it's just, you know, some people don't want to admit it. They're like, whatever. But he gave him the W. If you don't want to admit it, that's on you. But I think even within that, reading it week to week, it was, you know, Whole Cake Island in the community at that time was one of the most polarizing arcs because it just, you know, people were just picking sides. I was, you know, wreaking havoc because I was rooting for Katakuri the entire time. People were like, yo, you hate Luffy, da da da. I was like, well, I don't hate Luffy. I just feel like he's severely outclassed, right? And, you know, Luffy, to be Katakuri, he literally had to learn Future Sight. So it's like, how many people are learning Future Sight mid-fight?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I mean, you're supposed to, like, that's what he said, but that's not easy. Luffy only survives because he's Luffy, right? Like, between rubber and plot armor, like, he survived long enough to learn Future Sight.
Come on. I mean, the mirror world using Brûlé, running away. You know, it was a lot. It was a lot that transpired in that fight. And then even after the fact, like I tell people all the time, it was like, well, Katakuri couldn't hit him. I was like, well, Luffy went into his fastest form in Snake Man, and then Katakuri caught him immediately.
Yeah. To me, so, like, I look at this list, right, with Katakuri, and I agree with you with, like, the people above Katakuri, it makes sense why they're there, but I'm like, okay, like, when I think about Katakuri, like, 1v1ing somebody, or not even 1v1ing. I don't know. Like, I just feel like his fruit and the way he uses it, like, if he just like used the sticky part, like, I feel like nobody really has a good grasp unless you have like a fire, I guess Sabo or a Kainu, right? Like, they have like a natural affinity against mochi. I guess fire versus gelatinous rice would kind of make sense that it would be weak against it, and then ice also, but like,
so that's the thing people have been talking about as well. The Katakuri has a weakness to fire, and that's something that's like,
but he can also use fire too, so he can
it's not, you're right, so it's not necessarily a weakness, it's just that it's effective, right? So and then also I know people talking about mochi after if you do boil it gets harder. It's like so many different things,
right?
But the thing is, you know, in the entire fight, even when Luffy used fire, it really didn't have an effect. The only effect that was basically stated as water, right? So, and that just removes the stickiness.
Right.
So I do think with Katakuri, it's difficult to kind of scale him because he has so many different abilities. So you could be like, well, how are you going to deal with Future Sight? Because we saw Future Sight for a second. It didn't work because of the Snake Man and Culverin, how it worked initially. But then he figured it out immediately. Then he countered it, right? We remember that epic scene where he literally just fucking just moonwalked and just dodged all these fucking attacks and
on first throw too, right? Like, he didn't even know it was coming. I think he dodged it, right?
Well, remember the first one like hit him, right?
And he was like,
wait, what? What was that? Then Luffy used Black Mamba, and then was it Black Mamba or it was the attack that like had all the hands going everywhere, and then Katakuri just dodged all of it, and then he decked Luffy. Then Luffy started moving fast, and Katakuri went to his donut mode. And then he slammed Luffy into the ground, created that giant chasm. And then it had that epic panel with his eyes glowing and shit. And then Luffy just got back up, even after being stabbed and all this different shit. So it's just like
even there, right? Like, you think about it, like, Katakuri restricted himself to 2 donuts to fight Luffy, right? But what's to say that he doesn't just like, he can't pull out like 100? He was doing that because like Luffy has 2 hands, right? But then like Katakuri, how many can he make? Like, he's dodging Luffy's thing.
Sticky,
like, he has like multi-sense, like he has attention span for this stuff. I can see him just like, if like Fishman Island, not even Conqueror's Haki, just like sitting still, wiping everybody. Just like, he just puts donuts in the sky, just pounds the ground, like kind of like Robin's foot thing. Like, he could do that. Like, there's no limit to. They didn't give us a limit to his power. And so like, that's why Katakuri, like, I love him. I think he's like one of the strongest people, and like, it's hard. Like, obviously I'm not sitting here like thinking like he's going to be stronger than Aokiji or Blackbeard, like Dragon. That doesn't make sense, like, narratively, but, like, it feels like it, right? Doesn't it feel like it?
Kinda.
Yeah. So, okay,
yeah, kinda.
So before I ask this question is a little crazy, but, because I feel like you might disagree, but, one thing, when I was thinking about the Sanji versus Katakuri fight, something I realized, and I realized it through making my Sanji video, is like, Sanji doesn't have to put limiters on against Katakuri because Katakuri is made of food. So we might, if it ever comes out when Sanji has to fight Katakuri, he could pull out swords. And Judge was like, "You're a swordsman. Why are you acting like you're not a swordsman, right?" And he's a professional chef. He knows how to stuff. So I was thinking, like, wait a second. That's why we never saw Sanji fight any of the food people in Whole Cake Island. Maybe it's for later on where like Sanji, like, not solos, but like all these food people show up, and then Sanji's like, "All right, I'll deal with Big Mom's crew because I can cook them." You know, like, and I was just thinking about that, like, wait a second. That's interesting. When like, because everyone's power scaling Sanji against Katakuri, and like, yeah, maybe right now he can't fight him, but I was like, wait a second, man could pull out hands, and that would be kind of scary.
That's interesting. I don't know. I
don't know if it changes anything, right?
It depends. It depends on what, because remember, Katakuri does have a weapon as well.
Yeah.
That didn't work. Whatever.
For debatable reasons.
Yeah. It just doesn't work. But it depends what Oda does with Katakuri, because if Katakuri remains stagnant, and Sanji will, ultimately surpass him. Yeah. But if Big Mom does indeed fall to the point that, she's retired or whatever, the person that naturally takes over is Kat. So then we get to a point where you kind of, it's kind of like in the position that you are, you kind of grow to fill the position, to fill those shoes. So, you'd have to kind of scale him up to the point that, if he's now viewed as an emperor,
it's different.
You give him the Conqueror's Haki coding, because I think that would change the game completely. Because if you give an awakened Devil Fruit user with Future Sight Conqueror's Haki coding,
nuts. Bonkers.
It does make things a lot more difficult with all the abilities he has. Because I think the problem, it seemed in the fight, was that he couldn't knock Luffy out, right? He was getting a lot of hits in, it just wasn't working. So if you give him that Conqueror's Haki coding, it puts him on another level and everything is amplified. But then also he could protect himself better, So this is all headcanon based on what we think. But also, if you do think Haki blooming is a thing in One Piece, why wouldn't he not bloom himself, right? Because he just went through a difficult fight. But it seems recently, it seems in the story that typically works for the strats. I'm not going to say Crocodile bloom because I think Crocodile was always that strong. It's just that
in the
story, he's fighting Luffy, like Luffy couldn't lose. And, you hate when it's a situation where you have to think like that because it kind of takes you out of it, where you're like, well, it's a main character. But Luffy versus Katakuri, it feels like that. And it felt like that. Like Luffy couldn't lose only because he's Luffy, So it is what it is. I don't like the Katakuri thing. I don't take it personally when people say I'm a Katakuri fanboy, because I probably am. But I'm
down with
it. Is
that.
what it is.
Call me that.
It is what it
Whatever.
is.
It
is what it is.
There's
dope.
validity there, I think.
Cat's dope.
So here's where you're gonna show. I feel like this proves that you're not a fanboy. You're gonna have rationality in this question.
Okay.
Okay. Conquer coding aside, right? Like the Conquer coding imbuement. Whether or not he brings it up, like that's absurd. And I have a different question about Conquerors later on. But what do you think about how do I word this? If Katakuri didn't care, or like if it was just like they had no relationship, Katakuri versus Big Mom, what do you think happens? Do you think I'm not you?
Wow,
go for that. Let me see.
Katakuri versus Big Mom.
Yeah, dude. Because all the other Yonkos, like Kaido, clearly over King, right? Like if that's the feeling. Marco, Whitebeard, right? Like this one.
You really think so? You really think it's close?
I don't know if it's just weird because we brought it up earlier, right? There's some wonky stuff that happens with Big Mom, and I think Big Mom's superpower is her devil fruit and like the things that she can do with it. But can she intimidate Katakuri? I don't know. And like in terms of like fighting, like I don't know if you need Conqueror's coding to defeat Big Mom. I mean, Law and what's his kid.
Yeah, they don't have that.
not kid disrespect here, but like
it's her. What's his name? Yeah, that was kind of disrespectful.
But I mean,
I think that is a crazy ass question. I'm not gonna lie to you, because something that was stated in Whole Cake Island was like, hey, if we can't stop her here, she's going to destroy the island, which makes it seem like Katakuri couldn't stop her either. But then is it reverence because that's his mother? But then we saw him kind of lose, quote unquote, lose to Luffy, and we saw how he got. Luffy is still struggling with someone like Kaido, who Big Mom seems to be his equal. So it seems like Big Mom is easily over Cat. I think the only way Cat could do something or hurt Big Mom is literally by like restraining her using Mochi, or literally like toppling her over, in a way. But it's just.
And that's what I'm saying. When you think about Katakuri's power, right? As absurd as it sounds, like if he didn't put the limiters on and he just wanted to wipe Luffy off the face of the planet, he could have. He could have done that to a lot of people, right? He's just not hacking his devil fruit, right? Like I think like Caesar, right? Like he could just wipe out the air for so many people and just win, right? But he doesn't do that for whatever reason, and that would be boring, right? For sure. But like when you think about Katakuri, like if it wasn't his mom and he wasn't like loyal to the point where he is, you know what I mean? And I actually have this like and I think it's chapter 1025. There was a spread, and I I said based off the spread, and like, you know, I don't hold anything accountable to that like prediction, but like there's been inklings of things here and there where it felt like Katakuri was going to die, and there's another character, but the way the spread looked, it looked like Big Mom and Katakuri had, like, based off of everything else, like they had 4 different Yonkos, right? And each Yonko was next to somebody who was like, 2 of them I think died, and then the other person was Garp next to Shanks. And so I was like, yo, like it makes sense that Garp would die, and then it would make sense that Shanks, like that's how he becomes like evil. And I'm not saying I hold to that point, but like Garp dying in the story kind of does make sense. Like it could make sense. And so then if you think that Garp is gonna die and the other 2 people are dead, and then you have Katakuri there, it's like, wait a second, is he dying? And then he's next to Big Mom, and every other person they had a fight. So it was Kaido and Oden. It was Ace and Blackbeard, and then it was Garp and Shanks, and then it was Katakuri and Big Mom. And so I was thinking, like, is there a reason Katakuri might fight Big Mom? And, you know, she killed one of her sons, and Katakuri is super loyal to his siblings, loves his siblings, you know, he'll protect them. And you have a situation where, like, yeah, he might not be, like, in that situation, he'll destroy all, no one can stop her, blah, 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 right? But, like, if push comes to shove and Big Mom starts eating his siblings, I don't know, like that was a weird one. So then that made me think, like that's what like honestly sparked the thought. I was like, wait, could Katakuri beat Big Mom? That's a weird one, because she's a Yonko. I agree, like they're showing she's equal, but like there's also weird things where like Kid and Law are damaging her without Conqueror's coding. Kid is slamming metal into her, and I don't know. In the manga, they're doing a bad job of showing if Kid's actually damaging her, because that's where a lot of the shame comes from me. I'm like, I don't know if this is doing anything to her, but and that's where the laughing part came from, like Frankie's motorcycle being in the top 10. But like, I don't. They're doing metal a weird thing in the thing where Kid's somehow damaging people with iron bars. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. And then you think, like, even without Conqueror's coding, if they could damage her, I don't see why Katakuri couldn't, right? Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you restrain her and then just fucking toss her in the water. They restrained her with just a metal box, right? Like,
can Katakuri find a way to restrain Big Mom? Yes, but I don't think right now, with the abilities he's shown, I don't think he can beat her.
All right, so you're not a Katakuri fanboy then. Right?
All right.
The irrational Katakuri stan would be like, "Yup, Katakuri over everything."
Yeah, but no, I'm not that far gone.
Yeah,
no, not yet.
I think there's a possibility, but I don't think I want Big Mom to be strong. I feel like in the story, like how CP0 is like, there's still the 2 Yonko cards. Like we feel like Kaido has like maybe 2 more levels to his powers, right? At least that's how I feel. With Big Mom, like we just saw, I call it Bigger Mom, like the soul thing.
Right.
Bigger Mom, like what else does she have? Like, is that it? Like, I don't know, but I feel like maybe Bigger Mom won't lose to Katakuri, right? But like from what we saw on Whole Cake Island, Katakuri there, I was like, damn, like I think that Katakuri might be able to do something here. But then again, her devil fruit is kind of wild, where she can have like these homies that are just like absurd. Yeah. And so like that changes things, because like whenever you fight Big Mom, it's not a 1v1, it's like a 4v1, right? Like, so that's like a whole different aspect that
I think Big Mom as well, and also damaging her, right? Her insane stamina, her insane durability. Do
you feel like we don't have an explanation for that yet, or do we?
You don't. We don't. Right, we can just assume it's like just.
But it's not Conqueror's coding, right? That's not what it is. It's not.
It doesn't seem like it's coding. It seems like it's just a protection, like divine protection almost.
You know what it's almost like? It reminds me of how Oden survived the boiling oil, and we didn't see any coding, but like somehow he did it, right? Like Big Mom probably could survive that too. Like maybe that makes sense. To me.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah. But it has to be, like you said, maybe it is the coding that they can use, but it does. It does feel like, something special that she has. You know what I mean? But yeah. Wow, we've been going for 2 hours and 25 minutes. What, you had another question?
This is like I think a good cap off where.
Okay.
Do you think that a conqueror could lose to a non-conqueror?
Yes.
Okay, example.
Yes,
Because right now it's feeling like if you don't have conquerors, you can't fight a conqueror.
Well, that's the new meta,
right?
Conqueror's
right.
Conqueror's Haki coding is the new meta,
right?
But
right.
for instance, I think first you'd have to have an overpowered devil fruit, right? So, so right now Sabo has not been revealed to be a conqueror, right?
Right.
I think Sabo's stronger than Zoro.
Okay.
He has, because for him he had a whole fighting style before getting his devil fruit. So he was strong before then, strong enough to be, considered the second in command for the most part of the Revolutionary Army. Now he adds one of the strongest devil fruits in the series.
Right.
That's a lot, even if you don't have Conqueror's Haki coding, because, Zoro can cut fire, but Sabo still has Ryosoken.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's just like,
so it hinges on the like if Sabo, in that what are they called, like the one shot or whatever where Ace fights Whitebeard? Did you read that?
Yeah, I didn't get to read it. No, I didn't get to read it. No.
Do you care?
Because
for
I read
the
I read the light novel though. I read yeah.
But I
didn't read the illustration that came out. But go ahead.
So I mean, like, I'm not spoiling too big, but there's a point where Ace like kind of just explodes the island, kind of like just engulfs it in fire, and we kind of see that in Punk Hazard, right? So you're saying like if someone has like an absurd devil fruit like that, then being a conqueror, you don't have that advantage. It
balances out
because Sabo could just turn the whole place on fire. What is Zoro supposed to do, right?
Right,
that kind of sense.
That's why I was talking about with Akainu, where like Whitebeard, what Whitebeard fought at Marineford is not fighting Akainu. You see, because Whitebeard wasn't necessarily holding back, because he was telling Akainu protect Marineford. Then that's what he said to him. For Akainu, if you're fighting him, there's magma everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So for you now, if you can fly, of course that helps. But if you cannot, you're trying to fight this man while literally you're fighting in a volcano. Right. He couldn't do that at Marineford. You know how many people would die?
Yeah.
And for him, even though he doesn't really care if like
he wouldn't do that.
Like, he would not like do that at Marineford. Like, so what Aokiji was facing against at Punk Hazard, that's not what Whitebeard was facing. So it's a completely different thing.
That's a good point. I feel like a lot of people forget about that. It's like I think about that same thing with Dragon. A lot of people say like, "Yo, Blackbeard went to Baltigo and wiped the Revolutionary Army," but like, no, they didn't. Like the Revolutionary Army, from what I know, no casualties escaped. Yeah. And why they had what are they doing there? They have refugees on their island, right? Like he can't fight with all these people there, all these citizens, all these weak people, right? Like Blackbeard has the upper hand there because he doesn't care about those people.
That's kind of the same thing I look at with Rayleigh versus Kizaru, right? Where we look at the dialogue and it does heavily, wank Rayleigh and make Rayleigh seem like this godly figure, and he is in the One Piece world.
Right.
But something as well for Kizaru is when he first showed up, he sent like a regular kick, right? And it was like, yo, you gotta chill. Like that just destroyed the mangroves.
Yeah.
Right?
And he's like, oh man, yeah.
Right. Right. So for him, because one of the dialogue that people point to is him saying, well, we're going to need more people to capture him. Right. And it's just like, yeah, because for Kizaru, he cannot go all out where he is.
Right.
He can't fight the way that he would probably need to fight to capture someone like
Meanwhile, Rayleigh just goes underwater and swims away because he's
gone. So it's, again, for power scaling, it's always interesting the perspectives that people have.
Yeah.
And then again, I'm not saying that I'm right. That's my perspective.
Right.
You know what I mean? And my opinion, I'm always open to changing my mind. If I talk to someone and they give me an argument where it's like, oh shit, that makes a lot more sense, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And something that I've changed my mind on as time has passed is Mihawk. Right. And that's why Mihawk is, I think I have him number 4, is because I'm looking at Zoro unlocking Conqueror's Haki coding. I'm like, shit, Mihawk should have that. Right.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's what I'm assuming. And if Mihawk has that with they talked about his observation Haki, where he was known as clairvoyant. I'm like, so he has crazy armor because it's a black blade. He's clairvoyant and he has Conqueror's Haki coding. There's no way he's not top 5.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how I was looking at it. And the reason why I put him over Big Mom and even Blackbeard, I think Blackbeard still has another devil fruit to possibly get. And for Big Mom, like you said, the moments in which she looks a bit shaky, you can't look like that against somebody that could possibly cut you in half.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You know, like, and that's why I have him higher.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked you, because like right now this whole Conquerors thing is the meta, but like it's one of those things where it's like pre-time skip, the Logia was that was meta. That was meta, and then right afterwards it was like,
the Haki.
Wait a second, Haki's meta, and now it's this, but every single time we see a way it gets flipped, and I'm just like, how does this one get flipped? And I was like curious what you'd say, because it's like it's hard to, because then it also thinks like, because when you talk about it like that, then there's another level to it that we're going to get to. That's a whole, like another arc, 2 arcs, 3 arcs. Yeah. I don't know how many things.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
It is. But I don't think that's why, people think that when you say Conqueror's Haki coding can't be the end all be all, it's a slight to characters that just attained it. But no, that's not the point. It's looking at what's upcoming and just how you have to maintain balance within a world. Of course, that may just be what it is in One Piece. If you have Conqueror's Haki coding, you're destined to be top 10.
Yeah.
Right? If you have Conqueror's Haki, you're destined to be top 10. Maybe that's why the Marines reacted the way they did. And Marineford, like, fuck. This kid has Conqueror's Haki.
Why is he not a Marine?
Right?
Yeah.
He has a potential now to be one of the upper echelon, because to be upper echelon, you must have Conqueror's Haki coding. That could be the reason why they reacted the way they did. Possible. But I think in the meantime, it's like, okay, right now that's the meta. I'm going to respect it. Yamato's going to get a bump, right?
Yeah.
Zoro, Luffy, they all get a bump because they have Conqueror's Haki coding. But I'm reserving judgment because something else could come about where it's like, okay, this is special too. And I think Oda's kind of showing it using Kid and Law, where if they defeat Big Mom, then it's like, oh, well, they have awakenings, and, awakenings may not be as strong as a Conqueror's Haki coding, but then you have Kinemon, who is still walking around after getting hit with Conqueror's Haki coded attack.
Right.
So that's why for power scaling, it's like, it's a good discussion. It's good. It's fun dialogue back and forth, but you can't take it to heart.
Yeah. There's more ways to make the story like function.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. All right. Been going for a while. We talked about the chapter, among other things.
Yeah.
Guys, if you would like to find Parvision's channel, the link in the description box down below. Check out his stuff. It's great shit. You heard us talk for over 2 hours. You understand a bit of how he thinks. Obviously a category fanboy, so already my guy. Did you have any closing words, anything you wanted to say?
Well, I think this is kind of like my tradition now, and I think you mentioned it too, where it's like we could talk forever. I feel like I have more questions, but if we talk again, then we'll save that for a different video, because that's okay. I always tease my viewers, is like, I'll save this for a different video, that video, this video.
Yeah. Nah, like I said, I told you I used to be the same way, but I appreciate you joining me though. This was a lot of fun. This is great.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out to me. This is like we recorded for 2 hours, but we talked for like an hour and a half before that too. So
correct.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. This is exactly what One Piece is about. The fact that we didn't even like scratch like so many, like we talked about one chapter, dude. Like
yes, yep. This one chapter.
That's how long this is enjoyable too. Hopefully everyone else enjoyed it too. And thank you for having me.
No problem. Anytime. Again, guys, Parvision's channel, description box down below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe. Of course, leave your thoughts below, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
I start doubting me, I felt lost.